Okay, we're going to give it a few more minutes. I think we're filling up with most everyone. I want to welcome Jesse this month. I didn't know you'd be joining us. I didn't know we have guest appearances from our most popular office members. Hello, Jesse. Okay, well, I'm gonna jump in. I think not that we necessarily have to have quorum to start, but I think we've got enough people. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. I want to welcome everybody to our Tuesday, April 5th, our full board meeting. I want to just again touch base on agenda and then just go over some general instructions as well. Today, as we've traditionally had, we're going to continue with our public safety session. Afterwards, we will have a business session. I dare to say it's light because every time we've said that, it seems to be the opposite of light. I do notice that Howard in transportation and Andrew will be speaking, so it's all cross our fingers, but I don't know. Anyway, I think we have a pretty straightforward agenda, some very good stuff. And then we'll do our community session, which is at the end. As a bit of reminder for the public, today, there are a couple different ways that you can participate. The main way that we are going to be doing is using the hand raise functionality. So if there is a topic or an opportunity, if everyone can look in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a thing that says raise hand. If you're an attendee, you should do that. I think most of our panelists know that. At the same time, there is a Q&A section. So if you're an attendee and you put in a question, we'll do our best to answer it. At the same time, if you're having some challenges, we'll have Max monitor that. We'll keep an eye. But our goal is to make sure that we get every single person who wants an opportunity to speak, and we think that you'll all come. I think that's it. If anybody thinks I forgot something, you can raise your hand, but I think we're good to go. So we're going to jump into the public safety session, and I'm going to just double check. I know that Captain Gallagher, yep, I see you. So there you are. Great. So let's jump into our public safety session. I know that I see Captain Gallagher. I know I see Captain Lazarus. We're going to hear from Keith Lazarus, which is a request from the 24th about a project they're working on. So it'll be a little bit different. So I'm going to start with the reports. Everyone kind of gives a brief report. Remember that there'll be a robust Q&A section as well, so there'll be more time. But I'll have Captain Gallagher start out. I want to thank you for the invite. I went to a ceremony, so it was always nice to see everyone. And I was really honored that you invited me, and perhaps you could share everyone about the dedication as well as part of your report. Got to unmute yourself. So we cannot hear you, Captain Gallagher, if you want to unmute yourself. I think you're unmuted, but just wait a sec. I see it's kind of going in. Let's see if that works. No, you're remuted. Why don't you try it one more time, and then maybe I'll jump over to Captain Lazarus and we'll come back. But you are, and I can see you're kind of not your traditional area as well. You want to say something now? Well, otherwise we'll move to plan B. Okay, so he might have gone out. So why don't we start with Captain Lazarus, and you can give your report. And I know that there's a program you're working on with Mr. Harris that you wanted to share, and we're going to give him a little time as well.
Great, thank you, everybody. Captain Noreen Lazarus from the 2-4 precinct. I'm the executive officer. I'm standing in for Inspector Yaguchi this evening. So just a quick report on the 2-4 precinct. When you look at our crime stats, currently for the 28-day period, we're up slightly, 3%. For the year to date, we're up a little bit more, 24%. What that pretty much, where we're seeing our increases right now is in the crime of burglary. That's where we're seeing that for both the 28-day and the year to date. This is kind of important because everybody in the room living in Manhattan, living in apartment buildings, what we're seeing are package thefts. A good percentage of our burglaries involve package thefts. And what that means is packages get delivered from Amazon or whatnot. They are placed in a lobby. and then someone who does not have access to the building, who might have to force themselves into the lobby, will take those packages. So we are seeing a bit of quite a percentage of package thefts throughout the precinct. The interesting thing, though, is we can connect, a few individual people to these crimes. So when we're able to apprehend an individual, we can often connect that person to, multiple incidents. And we've done some really great work. So while you see that our burglaries are up, there have been a number of arrests. And those arrests come through our patrol officers who are responding to these jobs while conducting a canvass, will find a person carrying packages. Or in other cases, they're looking for a wanted flyer and they will spot that individual on the street. Or they come to the work of the detectives. So between all that, we show this increase in burglaries, but we do have quite a few arrests to show for it, which is really some great work. But it's also, a time for myself to get the message out there that please secure your packages. If you have an opportunity to have them delivered at another location, like Whole Foods, or different companies have different drop-off points, or please don't buzz people into the building unless you put eyes on them. So again, that's just some of the tips that we'd like to get out. But in terms of violence, really it's burglaries that we're seeing the increase in crime. Violence-wise, shootings, we did have a shooting in January in the vicinity of Douglas houses, but we haven't had one since. So in terms of that, we're doing really well. So I think, we have our NCOs out there. They're really focused on, being out on the street, our sector cops up and down Manhattan Avenue. So, we're looking in the violence way, we're where we need to be with that. I'll turn it over to Mr. Harris, who this is my first time actually meeting you. Hi, but you've been in contact with Inspector Yaguchi, and from my understanding, you have been in contact about starting up programs for children in Douglas houses, because there's a lack of that. So if you want to spend a few minutes, and I'll leave that up to the moderator to kind of direct that, to explain kind of your vision and I believe, resources that you might need and how we can, work together to get those.
Just a brief intro to Mr. Harris. Deputy Yaguchi had asked us to give you a little bit of time in a program you're working with, so happy to do so. Generally, if you give kind of a brief summary, there will be a Q&A section. And what I do think is that we've got a very strong, various different committees that could go across. Youth education is one that speaks about it, and I think there could be an opportunity to come in a more in-depth manner. But let's have you speak about the endeavors that you want to share.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Keith Harris. I'm from Frederick Douglass Houses. Currently, I spoke with Inspector Yaguchi about reinstituting one of the programs that I participated in as a teenager called the PAL program. The PAL program was an institution, longstanding institution, where the cops at the precinct participated in different activities with young members of the community. It was one of the key secondary enrichment programs that we had. And when I say secondary enrichment programs in the area, there were about between 12 to 14 programs that young people between the ages of 12 all the way up to 17 could participate in the neighborhood across 6 different venues. From PS 145 to Grosvenor's to Frederick Douglass Community Center, mentioned the PAL program, PS 163, and a couple of the other churches in the area. Currently, right now, there's a program at Brandeis High School all the way down on 84th Street, and then we really don't get the next program up until you go to Riverside Church. So there's a vast chasm of these programs that helped steer me in the right path. Those programs aren't really there anymore for a lot of young people. And I tend to think that if you place positive options in front of different individuals that may have a tough time in school or a tough time dealing with issues at home or a tough time just adjusting post-pandemic, that you put as many options in front of them as possible, they're more than likely going to make the right decisions. As we all know, between the ages of 13 and 17, that's when you're at your most mischievous and you need that creative energy to put forward your best foot to see who you want to be in the world. And like I said before, options and alternatives, as opposed to just, wandering into some things that may not be conducive to many of the young men and young women in the area. So we started speaking about the PAL program and other alternatives. This week, I have a meeting over at the Frederick Douglass Community Center. I'm currently at PS 165 on 109th Street between Broadway and Amsterdam. I'm the head coach of the Coaching Recess Program, which is another program that we can carry forth with one of my partners to any other places. And where we are right now, we're looking for venues to host some of these programs. And we're actually going to get into the next level of the conversation to discuss funding and community resources that can help prop up and put together some of those same programs that I participated in as a young man. So I know you guys have an agenda. I just wanted to keep it brief. And I'll be here for the duration of the meeting, listening. And if you guys have any suggestions, I'll share my information with you. I would love to continue the conversation and the dialogue later.
Great. Well, there'll be a Q&A section here, so we're going to move on. We'll try and get Captain Gallagher again, but there'll be some Q&A, and it'd be great if you'd stay after this session as well.
Sure.
Captain Gallagher, I see.
I'm here.
Great. Well,
Perfect. Thank you.
Great to see you. And again, I appreciate the invitation this month, and perhaps you could share in your report that which I thought was a really powerful day.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. And thank you, everybody. It's great to see everybody virtually. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but I feel like it wouldn't be an official meeting if there wasn't some technical difficulties. So I don't think I've ever been to a meeting where there hasn't been technical difficulties. So thank you all for bearing with me. As Steve alluded before, we had a very beautiful ceremony at Central Park. And thank you, Steve, for coming. And thank you to the councilwoman, Gail Brewer, for coming as well. We memorialized on our wall in Central Park 8 police officers who died in the line of duty in Central Park. Some of them modern, like Detective Stephen McDonald, who passed away 5 years ago, but some of them going back more than 100 years ago. And sadly, some of the officers who died 100 or more years ago were somewhat lost to history, and that their sacrifice was not properly recognized. And I'm really, really glad that we were able to do that. Police Commissioner Sewell joined us in a very, very beautiful ceremony. And, it's important for us as police officers to remember the people of our profession who died in the line of duty. And I also bring this up just to remind everyone that some of the decisions and situations that we have to make are incredibly dangerous. And policing sometimes comes with tremendous personal sacrifice, and in some cases, the ultimate sacrifice. And it's part of our job as police leaders to make sure that those sacrifices aren't forgotten. So, Steve, thank you so much. Your presence was wonderful on behalf of the board and the councilwoman. That being said, I have good news to report today. We had a very good 28-day period from the last time we spoke. We did not have any felony index crime in Central Park. As you know, we generally rate the safety of a neighborhood based on 7 major crimes. And in the past 28 days, we have not had any of them. So I'm hoping to continue that in Central Park and to keep the park as safe as possible. And I'll be happy to take any questions, comments, or concerns from anybody about policing Central Park or NYPD in general.
Okay, we'll open it up to all of them. I did want to just jump back for one question.
Sure.
And that was for Captain Lazarus. And Captain Lazarus, obviously there was I shouldn't say obvious, but there was a very high profile incident over the weekend, an anti-Semitic incident. I know it was on 86, which is the border of 24th or 20th, but I was wondering if you could add anything to that. It's clearly a very disturbing incident. And I know that that's something that everyone, if you could share some light on, would be wonderful.
Sure. So again, that did take place in the confines of the 2-0 precinct, which is on the border to the 2-4 precinct. It did involve kids. It did have an anti-Semitic nexus to it. So that is something that was handled by the 2-0 precinct. Hate crimes, again, we'll take an investigation on it. It is disturbing. So we Inspector Yaguchi has made myself available if any parents or whatnot from schools want to come in and discuss the incident. But as a result of that, we have stepped up our visits to schools, visits that are done by the patrol officers, by the YCOs, and by the NCOs. So that's how we're responding, by making sure our presence is more of a presence, as well as inviting anybody who wants to come in and discuss it further. In terms of the investigation, I really can't speak on that. So I'm not the right person to speak on that, but more so just how we can respond afterwards.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I knew it was on the border, so I wasn't sure, but you clarified it's for the 20th. So thank you for adding anything you can. Christian, briefly, did anybody sign up? I don't think we're going to get a lot of signups, but did anybody sign up?
We were not able to put up the sign up for anybody to see. So.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, I didn't know if we got it in the Q&A. I can't monitor both.
No, we did not.
Okay, great. So for all of the attendees, if you again raise, we generally prioritize the attendee audience during this section. So there isn't, but if anybody wants to raise their hand, I encourage them to do so now. And for that, I'll take some of our own community board members. But if attendees start to raise their hands, I'm going to move over to them. So I'll start with Susan Schwartz.
Thank you so much. It's just a quick question for Captain Gallagher about the recent arson incidents in Central Park.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. Good to see you again.
You too.
So during the 28-day period, we had an incident where an individual lit a fire in the North Woods. And the fire spread pretty quickly because it's a wooded, dry area. We have an idea who that individual is, and arson is investigated by a combination of a separate unit in the NYPD called Arson and Explosives, and the NYPD, not the NYPD, sorry, the fire department's fire marshal. So they're investigating it. The kind of good news is that this person lit a fire in probably the one place in Manhattan where it would literally never harm anybody, which was the middle of the woods where there were no structures and no people. And the fire department came right in and put it right out. It got obviously magnified due to a lot of social media posts and media attention, but it is an ongoing investigation.
Actually, I've heard from birders that there were other incidents in the Ramble as well, other fires set. I don't know if you knew that. But anyway,
I don't have any reports of intentional fires set in Central Park.
Okay.
In other areas of Central Park other than the North Woods. But sometimes there are brush fires that do occur inside the park and they do go to 911, but they're generally non-intentionally set.
Okay, great. Thanks for the update. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too, Susan.
Well, I'm going to have a hybrid, for a lack of a better word, a half community member, half a community board member. Peter, you're sort of in between there as we see you so often. So why don't you share?
Thank you so much. Peter Arson with the Columbus Amsterdam bid. And my question was for Keith. Keith, can you share your contact information with the community board or reach out to me? We have a strong interest in supporting anything that you're doing. We also have the open streets on Amsterdam on Saturdays and Sundays. And if you wanted to bring activities out there, you'd be welcome to. But just please be in contact.
Oh, yes, for sure. Definitely. Will do.
Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, Shelley.
Thank you. First, I want to commend Keith for his work up until now and what will happen in the future. And I'm sure you will have the support of the entire community in every way possible. On the anti-Semitic incident, my wife's students, three of them were three of the six boys who were approached by three boys who were a little older, but not much, but two wearing ski masks, carrying a machete, a crowbar, and a knife. The boys were clearly stated that they said, "You're Jews, and we don't fight clean." Fortunately, the boys were smart enough at a certain point to run, and one of the boys lived down the block, and so they went into that location. That was fortunate, but I spoke to someone whose daughter in another community not far away had run to a building and they wouldn't take her in when she was being followed and chased. So it brought to my recollection the safe haven program that the West Side had many years ago. Through the West Side Crime Prevention Program. And maybe it's something we should consider supporting and bringing back. Basically what happened is stores would sign up and get stickers that say safe haven, and people would know that they could come in there if they felt threatened. My wife and I walking on Broadway, my wife her jumper was grabbed from the back, and person kept pulling on it, and she broke away, and we started moving quicker, walked into what was Happy Burger at that time on Broadway, and they immediately contacted the police, and within 2 minutes, the fella who was doing this was apprehended by the police. The fact is that the streets are not right now what they were. This is a particular serious incident that happened. Fortunately, no one was hurt. To the credit, I had been in touch with Captain Zuber. To his credit and the credit of the 20th, they responded right away. Number one. Number two, it was referred to the NYPD Hate Crimes Unit. That's being handled there. And basically everything that can be done has been done, and Gail Brewer followed up also to make sure everything was in order. But this is not an unusual situation in terms of people being stopped, children in particular, many communities, the Jewish community in particular. Unfortunately, this was particularly harrowing because of the weapons and the ski masks and the fact that it was on the Jewish Sabbath. So let's hope that we start thinking about things that the community can do that'll help make it feel safer and have solutions when people are in trouble, so they know where to go and how to go.
Thank you, Shelley. I am going to read a Q&A because I want to make sure we get as much community. It's a little bit more of a public question, and Peter Arndt, maybe a little bit more for yourself, but there is a question that says, can we talk, is there a chance we could talk about the loud concert concerns, open street events that happen on 109th and 110th on Amsterdam? Peter, I don't know if you have any thoughts or maybe how they can coordinate with you about this, but it's an Aaron Cram has put this in the Q&A.
Sure. If they want to reach out to me, they can send an email to info@columbusamsterdambid.org, or they can call my cell number at 646-207-7276. I can repeat that, or else they can get that.
No need to repeat that. We'll have Max follow up, just so you know. It's
sure. And we do have,
we can connect anybody that we want afterwards. So
sure. There has been a drum circle that has started for 2 hours on Sunday afternoons from 2 to 4. And we welcome it, and it seems to be well received by the kids and a number of people in the neighborhood. So we anticipate that going on for some period of time. Thanks.
Well, maybe you can coordinate and share your thoughts, but
sure.
Max can put you together, and then also Mr. Harris, Max has all the information and can connect everyone. He takes good notes from here. Okay.
Thank you.
If we want to continue on, let's have, I'm just looking, I don't see any of the other community members, so we'll continue on with community board members. Rich Robbins.
Hi, thank you. And thank you, captains, for joining us. My question, as always, every month, we get great reports about violent crime, not on the streets, but not about what's happening on the streets. I've just looked at the open data on the NYPD website, and I see that to date, there are 226 crashes reported in the district, in our district, which encompasses both the 2.0, the 2.4, Central Park, and the highway. And already this year, 84 people have been injured. That's been 31 pedestrians, 14 cyclists, 35 motorists. So I just want to ask the captains, what is being done to reduce this number? And have more tickets been given out? What are we doing to try to make an impact here?
So traffic safety is always a topic of discussion, especially on the Upper West Side. When we all have to share our streets with pedestrians, cyclists, vehicles. So within the 2.4 precinct specifically, we are up slightly in collisions. Again, that number reflects, I believe that you were stating, multiple jurisdictions, but we're up slightly, and that sometimes goes week to week. Some weeks we're up, some weeks we're down. Year to date, we are up slightly. In terms of enforcement, we have areas that are known, we call them collision prone locations. And these are locations where we see multiple accidents happening at the same place. So some of those historically have been 104 in Amsterdam Avenue, 96 in B-Way, 96 in Amsterdam. So we concentrate enforcement around the areas that we are seeing collisions. And again, that enforcement goes for vehicles and cyclists as well. When we do our enforcement, we have another piece that has, I'm going to say, become a little bit more recent, but that's also stepping up education. And that's a citywide effort on, the Vision Zero education. And that is handing out literature, speaking to both motorists and pedestrians. And so we've been also incorporating that into our traffic safety program. And that's also at the direction of our leadership, our executive leadership in the Transportation Bureau. So we've been doing that in education along with the enforcement. And there's always the engineering aspect where we go around and we do see where we do have collision prone locations. Is there an engineering aspect that can be looked at? Is it a DOT issue? Is there a traffic light? So we do look at that right now. We do take concerns and suggestions from the community if they do have an engineering defect, or we do take requests for stoplights, whatnot, and pass that on to DOT, who ultimately makes the final decision. But again, Vision Zero is still what we aim for. And, we concentrate our enforcement where we do see the collision activity. And we want the whole precinct involved, which is nice. We just don't have it geared towards our traffic safety officers. We have this push now to get everybody involved. So that's where we're at now.
Thank you. And I did want to share that Renee Green-Levitt shared Rich's concerns. They are on West End and they're the head of their co-op building. So I'm glad that you were able to share that as well. And let's have another panelist speak, or a board member, and let's have Kristen Berger.
Hi, I just don't see Blanche or Courtney from the Youth Education Libraries Committee on right now.
I'm here.
But I wanted to affirm.
I'm here.
Oh, hi. Stephen mentioned earlier that maybe it would be appropriate to have Keith come speak to that committee. And even if it's not time within a meeting, there are definitely ways we can reach out and work with you, because I have some ideas of places to start reaching out for.
No, we definitely will reach out, because Blanche and I actually already talked about this is a general topic for the next month or two. So this is perfectly timed. So we'll definitely reach out.
Wonderful. Great.
So we're going to go through a couple more. I'm still monitoring the Q&A, and we'll have Ken Coughlin go.
Hi, this is for Captain Gallagher. Thanks for coming to the meeting. I just wanted to raise what seems to be a growing problem on the Loop Road, which is very fast-moving electric powered vehicles, mostly the scooters. I'm sure you've heard about this.
Sure.
I was just in the park this afternoon, which is why it's very fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
Riding a bike. It's, I hesitate to call for enforcement. I know it's very tricky. You don't want to pursue. These guys some of them are going very fast.
Yeah.
Eventually, there's going to be a tragedy. In fact, last year we had a runner come to our Parks and Environment Committee meeting who had been rear-ended by somebody on an electric scooter, and then they'd taken off, and he was seriously injured. So anyway, what kind of education maybe are you doing?
Sure. Well, in terms of education, sometimes the rules about the legality of these types of, e-bikes, scooters, mopeds, is somewhat confusing. It's a relatively brand new change in the law. And it is honestly sometimes confusing to a lot of people that there are some people that think that they can ride these things legally. And in fact, one of the more common situations we encounter when we do enforcement is people, basically stating, no, my electric bike or my moped is legal. And so getting the word out about the legality of these things is a work in progress, definitely. But I do think that there needs to be more enforcement. And we have in the park increased our enforcement, particularly with respect to these types of vehicles, because I agree with you, this is a problem waiting to happen. Right now, I don't have any data that supports that there's been a serious collision this year, but obviously this has been, the winter months, the colder months. And as we transition to a more active park during the spring and summer, these things are going to go out. So my plan is increasing enforcement. I generally, during the winter, have my traffic team patrol the transverses, because the transverses are most dangerous during the winter time because of ice. When it's a warm day, I pull them back into the park. And I've pulled them back into the park for the devices that you're talking about much quicker than I did last year. So I'm very concerned about this. And I do think it's time for more enforcement with respect to these devices, these motor vehicles.
When you say enforcement, does that mean ticketing them for speeding or for reckless driving or or just kicking them out of the park?
I think it's a combination of everything. Speeding to me is the most important one, because if you issue a speeding summons, you don't have to get into a debate about the legality of the motor vehicle, right? You can't speed no matter what kind of vehicle you have. I just want to point out that I'm very careful with my officers that I tell them to address a condition like this. I don't, automatically mean writing a summons. For me, the act of a police officer pulling somebody over, instructing them to not do or speed or do whatever they're doing, I leave it up to the officer's individual decision whether to issue a summons or not. So just to clarify, when I mean enforcement, I mean pulling people over, taking a look at their driving record and assessing it from there.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Because sometimes I think you can get just as much behavior change simply by pulling somebody over and say, hey, don't do that, than you can with giving them, a fine. Because at the end of the day, nobody likes being pulled over by a police officer, but people are much happier when they're pulled over by a police officer and they don't get a summons.
I find that shocking, Captain Gallagher. Something new every day. There is a question in the Q&A. Reed Perone has asked, is it feasible to require license plates on electric bicycles? I know that may be just your opinion as opposed towards factual, but just curious if you had any thoughts on that.
The problem with those, and this has definitely been bandied about a lot, actually. In order for the Department of Motor Vehicles to register something, there has to be a VIN number, vehicle identification number. That's how essentially our licenses and our license plates are tracked. To the best of my knowledge, some of these mopeds and whatever they call limited access motorcycle, I think is the technical term, don't have VIN numbers when they're created. So it becomes very, very difficult, almost impossible to license them without the VIN number. Hopefully maybe that'll be changed someday, but that is one of the barriers that I've been told to the licensing of these things. But obviously I would support the licensing of it, yes.
I appreciate that. And I know that we had a resolution to support that. I do know I knew I sat with the baristas in terms of registering them because of theft. But anyway, I just wanted to, again, pass this along. We're going to have a few more questions, and then we're going to get ready to move on. Robert, you've been very, very patient. Please go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Stephen. Yeah, going back to Shelley's report, if I heard correctly, Shelley, you said that those young men had run into a nearby building. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes,
That is
one of the boys lived there.
Then what was the NYPD follow-up on that, since we know where they were?
The mother immediately called the 911, and the 20th responded right away and to the scene and spoke to the boys. Okay, and got their reports. And there were no videos, apparently available, but they're still looking for it. Surveillance videos, maybe from buildings either on West End or on the side street, to identify the individuals who were responsible here. Also, there's been as of now, no reports by people around, either people from buildings or from the street. So it's basically the report of the boys who were approached.
I wonder, Captain Gallagher, I wonder, what is it? Does the NYPD have a program to work with these kids? In this case, with a mother called, and that's about as much veracity as you can ask for. Other than, I don't know if they get arrested. A machete is a frightful, it's a tool in where it belongs, but not something that belongs on the street, certainly. And we remember that case up in the Bronx where they butchered this poor kid. And but what about the actual one-on-one work with these young people once they're apprehended? The counseling sort of thing, the NYPD. I know in the past that the police work with young people was effective. It worked. And you take them by the hand sort of thing, scare the hell out of them. I almost said another word. And because these kids sound like they were about 16 or so. And shake them up, and then actually some of them turn around and want to become cops. I mean,
Sure, absolutely.
So, but what's in place right now? And when we get lucky and get this kind of parental, Okay, that's my question. Maybe we're breaking up, but that's essentially.
Thank you, Robert. I think Captain Gallagher is going to speak, and then we're going to end the session, but he's going to give you some feedback. Go ahead, Captain.
Sure. One of the things that the police department has, and in conjunction with the district attorney's office, is what's called a diversion program. Yeah. So let's say we have like a 16-year-old kid who does something that's foolish, and we want to make sure that kid goes on the right path. Okay, and maybe they do get arrested by a police officer. It goes to the district attorney's office, and the district attorney diverts it, meaning the district attorney stops the criminal process at that point in time and sends that child into some type of program. Maybe it's an anger management program, maybe it's some mentorship, that type of thing. And it's pretty effective. Now, I would definitely support that, and we do support that for low-level nonviolent actions. Carrying machete is, I think, more along the line of a very, very serious matter, because like you absolutely stated, a machete is a deadly weapon. It is designed to seriously cut things. So when we have kids that do things like graffiti, shoplifting, those types of things, we do have a pretty robust diversion program in conjunction with the DA. One other thing too, and I don't want to belabor your time. I want to be respectful of your time, but we have an extensive amount of NYPD youth programs that are internally NYPD ones. So we have what's called a blue chip program, where NYPD officers actually in each precinct coach a basketball team, coach a baseball team. Obviously, we have, as we talked about before, the wonderful work of the Police Athletic League. And for the record, I was in a police athletic league program as a kid too. And I just wanted to shout that out as well. So we do have a lot of very, very important, and I think very, very successful NYPD youth programs for kids.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, do you want to add any? Let's let Mr. Harris, do you want to add anything from your perspective as well? And then Madeline, I see your hands up and you'll speak next.
Yes, just the situation that was mentioned with the 3 young men that committed, this crime and this activity. It's there's no excuse for that type of behavior or that conduct. But I can think about a time where I had a gentleman in one of my groups that I used to oversee and coach. This was around maybe 2006, where he was into some, criminal activity, as was previously mentioned. There was a diversion project that he was in, and then he was in my group. And, it's very funny because now I actually have his son as one of my 2nd grade students at PS 165. And we had a conversation and he shared with me, he said, Keith, listen, at that time, my family was dealing with this particular issue. I had a lot of peer pressure. There was gang activity. There were so many things going on. But your program allowed me the time to breathe. It gave me a time to contemplate what should be my next move. And even though every time I went home, I had to deal with hell, here was a place of solace where I could kind of gather myself, have a great influence from you and the other coaches and the other tutors, and make the right decisions. And if it wasn't for that space that I had then, I wouldn't be here now. So this is the type of feedback that I've been getting. I call them my kids because I had them when they were 12, 13, 14, and now they have children themselves and I see them with their children. So, when you hear things like this, you try to figure out, okay, where did things go wrong? And also, can there be course correction to veer the young people into a path to where they're not doing these things? And like I mentioned, there was a plethora of programs that I was involved in, that the young gentleman that I told the story of right now, that he was involved in. And right now, I just don't see all of those options that we had growing up. And I would like to definitely see if there's any way we can work together to even speak to some of the young men that may have made a bad decision at a bad time, because no one is irredeemable. Everyone's redeemable. And, you just have to have the right example and that time to have clarity and solace, despite whatever it is that they may be dealing with.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. So we're going to have Madeline Innocent. She's going to be the last sort of Q&A, and then we're going to close up the session and thank everyone. Madeline, you're on.
Yeah. Hi, Keith. We both live in Douglas houses. How are you? I've lived in Douglas houses. Well, my family did, because I moved out at a certain point, 1957. And I understand about the PAL. That was very prevalent in those days to help get, it was a lot of different programs. However, the federal government cut a lot of these programs, and it left the kids, and like you saying, people that maybe you and I grew up with, they grew up with them cutting programs, and that's all they see. And then when they had kids, there were nowhere else to go. But PAL is fine. I think things have to be a little more creative. We live in a different time today. Anything associated with the police, kids are reluctant. Because I remember one summer, they had something out there with the kids and the police. And the kids, I won't tell you what they said. It's not a great word, but they are not interested in that. Right. Before the pandemic, and I don't know if Mark is on, and I hope it's okay to speak about this. We were trying to, we got together with the sponsor who said that having chess masters give kids more focus, as well as in their schoolwork, and have something to do. After school, there's nowhere to go. Right. Also, this past Sunday, I go to St. Michael's Church, and they're looking for more diversity within St. Michael's Church, but also they have a reparation committee, and they want to find out what they can do for the youth in the Upper West Side. So there's a lot of different things going on, but I think what's so important, kids today are not interested in the things that we grew up with. And I've had them tell me, oh, you old. You know, I know I'm old, but some things didn't work. So I think maybe be a little more creative. And additionally to the PAL and other, that's why I came up with the chess. I sat out during the summer before the pandemic. I had kids come up to me. I had adults come up to me and wanted to play chess. And it surprised me so that the residents were interested in a game that I don't play that well. But it was a great source of camaraderie, something to get us together, start us talking. So I think this doesn't have to be one thing. It should be multiple things because there are different type of kids out there that want different things. And I think today, I'm not trusting the police. So I think we have to get them to trust people in general and then work towards the police. So that's just my opinion where it should go.
Right.
Just
you
can
I
want to say something?
Okay, just quickly. I do agree that across the board, in different areas, different segments, different neighborhoods, there is an adversarial kind of aggravation and tension between the citizens and the police. That's something that, you know, we can table and speak to another day. But I do agree with you. And one of the things that I found in my experience, especially dealing with some of the young people today, there are 5 areas of interest that they have that you can kind of break through any communication gaps. That's creative, artistic, social, technological, and athletic. Any of those 5 sectors, it is easy to break through, to at least get their ear, their eyes, and their attention and have them engage. So once again, we are definitely on the same page with that.
Well, I want to thank everyone. Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Well, Captain Gallagher, I've been chastised as Deputy Inspector Gallagher, but you have to update your thing because I'm calling you.
Thank you. You're right. You're right. I'm sorry.
So we'll both take blame on that. And Captain Lazarus, thank you so much. It was a great session. I think it's very helpful to the community, and we really value your time. So thank you all. And Mr. Harris, I'm sure that Courtney and our YEL will reach out to you to speak in the future, and we'll make sure that they get your information. I have your email.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
We're going to move on to our business session. We're going to jump right in. I just want to remind everyone again, if you are a community member and we are then going over an issue, you want to speak during that issue, there will be a time and place to do that. You can raise your digital hand. I think as you see, I'm trying to get as much of the Q&A involved as well. So I'm reading it into it so there'll be multiple ways. So our first session is going to be HHS. I believe, Catherine, you're going to be handling our resolution, and I'll hand it over to you. And I don't see you, but I'm thinking you're going to have to unmute yourself if I don't hear you.
Okay, here I am. So I just want to preface my presentation by saying that I am logging in from Romania, and it's 2 a.m. and I am very jet lagged. So please be patient with me and let me know if anything that I share is unclear in any way, and I will clarify. So I'm Catherine DeLazaro. I am co-chair of Health and Human Services with Sheldon Fine. And I'm presenting a resolution on suicide and self-injury, which can be prevented by addressing risk factors and root causes, as well as by providing more robust and targeted screening and intervention. This resolution is a culmination of what the Health and Human Services Committee learned at last month's meeting from Jonathan DiPiero and Anitha Iyer at Mount Sinai, as well as Christina Coleman and Victoria Dexter of Safe Horizon. I'm going to share key information from the resolution, and more details can be found in the text of the resolution, which will be posted online after this meeting potentially. And I'm also hoping that we can make the slide decks from the presentations available as well, because those are really excellent. So suicide is death caused by self-directed injurious behavior with any intent to die. Some warning signs include talk of feeling like a burden, feeling alone or trapped, or in unbearable pain. Those are warning signs, as well as certain behaviors like isolating oneself or being more aggressive, and mood, such as depression, anxiety, humiliation, and shame. Self-injury or self-harm is when a person hurts his or her own body on purpose. Some warning signs for self-injury include unexplained wounds or cuts, unexpected body coverage, such as wristbands or warm clothes, even in the summer, and hiding of dangerous objects, such as razor blades. Suicide and self-injury are preventable. Every 16 hours on average, someone in New York City dies of suicide, and an estimated 6% of the US population will self-injure in their lifetime. Those who are especially at risk of suicide and self-injury include healthcare workers, other essential workers, and unpaid caregivers, as well as youth. In the US, suicide is one of the leading causes of death among those 14 to 18 years old, and suicide rates among all youth have doubled in the last decade. The CDC does an annual adolescent survey. The most recent one found that 20%, that's 1 in 5, of youth reported considering suicide. Youth most at risk of suicide attempts include those who identify as American Indian or Alaska Native, those who are living in high poverty communities, and girls. Rates of suicide attempts have increased significantly among Black youth in particular by 80% since 1991, and especially Black girls. Also at high risk are youth who identify as LGBTQ and those who report having sex with persons of the same sex or with both sexes. Compared to boys and young men, girls and young women are at the highest risk for self-injury. Even though it's currently estimated that 1 in 5 youth overall consider suicide, and of LGBTQ youth, that number is as high as 1 in 2, or 50%. The same CDC survey found that less than 1 in 10 of American youth received mental health care in the last year. And though almost 50% of LGBTQ youth reported they wanted counseling, the same group were unable to get it. So 50% reported that they want it and were unable to get counseling. Another group that's really high risk for suicide and self-harm are those who've experienced violence and trauma, especially as children. The same CDC adolescent survey found that 10% of youth reported within the last year before taking the survey, 10% reported experiencing sexual violence, 14% reported bullying, 55% reported verbal abuse by a parent, and 11% reported physical abuse by a parent in the last year. Risk factors for suicide and self-injury include violence, such as bullying, sexual and physical violence, and other adverse childhood experiences. As many as almost 80% of those who self-injure report physical and sexual abuse during their childhood. PTSD is also a risk factor for suicide and self-injury, especially for women, veterans, and those who've experienced sexual violence. And for those who've experienced violence, destructive behaviors such as suicide and self-injury may be attempts to solve problems related to feelings of powerlessness, fear, and danger. There are many other additional risk factors for suicide and self-injury, including mental health challenges, serious medical issues, prolonged stress, and structural barriers to receiving mental health care or stigma around seeking help, as well as poverty. Expanded services are needed to prevent suicide and self-injury, and the speakers who came to our session last week emphasized that we know what works, we just need to do more of it. So services that should be enhanced include screening for suicide and self-injury and associated risk factors in multiple settings, as well as more training and risk assessment and intervention for different populations. Intervention and timely access to evidence-based care. There's specific therapies that work, like cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy, as well as therapy that focuses on problem-solving skills. New York City Well is a great behavioral health linkage and crisis response resource that provides a lot of useful information is online, including safety and coping plans. Crisis response and follow-up. New York City should invest in more publicly funded alternatives to just-in-time access, which enables 24/7, 365 crisis response with access to patient records, as well as use of technology to facilitate consistent and long-term follow-up, that there's follow-up. There's also great need for more education and communication around suicide and self-injury. There's a lot of myths that need to be addressed, such as the myth that asking about suicidal thinking makes someone more susceptible or more likely to attempt suicide. New York City can engage in a robust campaign of public service announcements to provide destigmatizing messages and information. A public health approach uses multidisciplinary methods designed for specific populations, as well as geographic areas with high need, and considers prevention at family, community, and societal levels. Any prevention or intervention strategy should be culturally appropriate and responsive to the strengths and needs of diverse populations. To give a couple examples, a majority of LGBTQ youth and youth of color report experiencing discrimination, and LGBTQ youth with access to affirming safe spaces reported lower rates of suicide attempts. Transgender and non-binary youth who were able to change their name and gender marker on legal documents report lower rates of suicide attempts. And different kinds of trauma should be taken into account when designing interventions. For example, trauma-informed counseling emphasizes the importance of personal agency and connections between self-harming behaviors and PTSD. So I'll shift to our resolves. The healthcare and hospital systems, the Department of Education, the Department of Youth and Community Development, and the City University of New York to provide expanded screening programs for suicide, self-injury, and associated risk factors. Be it further resolved that Community Board 7 calls on New York City healthcare and hospital systems to provide training for healthcare workers to meet the needs of specific populations and invest in infrastructure to help bridge or connect patients to timely and appropriate care. This includes access to mental health services and just-in-time access for crisis response, as well as supportive resources for healthcare workers and unpaid caregivers. Be it further resolved that Community Board 7 Manhattan calls on New York City to invest in trauma-informed alternatives to 911 for crisis response, including hotlines that serve as crisis intervention for abusive behaviors, and greater investment in child advocacy centers for children and youth. Be it further resolved that Community Board 7 Manhattan calls on the DOE, DYCD, and CUNY to invest in long-term supports, including more social workers and psychologists, as well as safe spaces and resources for specific populations, such as LGBTQ youth. To empower students and staff, the DOE, DYCD, and CUNY should provide more information on risks, signs, and protective factors, such as social connections, open communication, lack of stigma, and self-efficacy, available public resources such as safety planning applications, and appropriate reporting and intervention strategies. Be it further resolved that Community Board 7 Manhattan calls on New York City to research possibilities for public and population health approaches to prevention, intervention, and response, including meaningful and evidence-based anti-violence and anti-discrimination, pedagogies and practices for youth, and professional development at all levels of New York City government. Be it further resolved that Community Board 7 Manhattan calls on the mayor and our elected city and state officials to advocate for and find ways to fund those initiatives. I think the most important thing that I know I learned and maybe others can attest to on the committee and those that were in the meeting is that there are clear root causes and risks that lead to these kinds of behaviors that are preventable. And so we need to do a better job in New York City and everywhere of kind of looking at the situation holistically and responding to the needs of particular groups who are suffering. So are there any questions?
Thanks, Catherine. Given your extreme miles away, I will monitor the digital part of it and we'll get you any questions. So Any questions regarding the resolution, either from attendees or panelists? Okay, well, I'm going to take that as a very thorough job. Here we do have one hand raised. So Polly, why don't you go ahead?
Well, first of all, Catherine and Shelley, I just want to say I attended the meeting, and I just want to thank you so much for bringing this to everyone's attention. I learned so much. And then as a person who works within the DOE, you know, unfortunately, we had situations where students, you know, had self-inflicted injuries. So I did bring that to the attention, and I appreciate you, you know, because I learned a lot as well as far as the signs to look for. So some of the things that we're doing is making sure that we post information by the bathroom. But one of the things I wanted to ask is, you know, because a lot of them have suffered trauma. And I know you said amongst the Black female youth, basically, you know, and so I'm trying to understand, what ages did they suffer this trauma, you know, the elementary school level? Because most of the people that I deal with are adolescent. So I just wanted to know, from your findings, when they reported these, I guess, data to focus on that particular group. And since they have suffered trauma, did it start you know, the lower grade, et cetera, 8, 9, 10 years old? Because it sounds like by the time they report it, it's like they're already adolescents. So I'm thinking we need to be proactive, as you said earlier, and figure out a way to, especially within the Black community, not to look at it as a stigma, to report it and to talk about it and to identify.
There's a lot of research, which is great. There's a lot of research that's being done on the dramatic increases in suicide among Black youth. So I share a lot of sources, but from what I read, it is young. It is starting young. I think there is a statistic that I cite in the resolution that I think it's from age 10 onward. But also, if I'm remembering correctly, Black children and youth also were more likely to die by suicide after they experienced a crisis. I think that, I think that parents need to get involved, you know, especially in the PTA. I think they could help a lot as well, you know, to help with that. But thank you so much, you and Shelley, for sharing that information, doing a great job, really. Thank you. Thank you for coming, Polly, and for the question and comments.
Thank you. Okay, any more questions, or I will pause for a second, or we can call the vote. Okay, does someone want a second calling the vote? Okay.
I'll
Madge,
second.
Okay, Madge, do you have a question, or are you getting ready to vote? Okay, so let's not vote yet. Let's everyone lower their hands. Just waiting for the second. So, great. Okay, and who am I counting with this week? Month, I should say. Seema, are we counting together, or?
No, it's me.
Okay. Oh, Bev. Okay. Okay. So everyone who's voting to support the resolution now, please raise your digital hands. Okay. Going to give a little bit more time. Remember, we always have a little bit of a glitchy process at the end. So we're at 37. If you want to raise your digital hand, it's, well, there we go. We're up and down. We went to 38, went 37, went 36. We're doing a little bit of a race here. So let's everyone hold. And great. So Bev, I think we see, again, everyone step away from their computers because somebody is going up and down and all around. You can't make it up.
36 digital.
My hand is physically raised up. Does anybody else have to physically raise up their hands today for any reason?
Blanche, voting.
I don't believe Blanche is on today. Okay, so let's lock that in at 37, right?
37.
Great. Christian, can you lower all those hands? Anybody voting against this, please raise their hands. I'm going to go kind of quickly here, so I don't see anything. We don't need to raise hands. Anybody abstaining? Okay, there are, I think you want to call that, Bev?
2.
2 for abstaining, if we can lower that. Again, lower that again, and anybody for cause. Great, you want to read the vote into record, Bev?
37 to 0 to 0 to 0.
Great, okay, thank you. So thank you, Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Shelley, for your work. And
hold on, wasn't that
Excuse me, that's not
37 to
accurate.
0 to 2 to 0?
Yeah,
2 abstentions?
I'm
Two
sorry. 2 to
abstentions.
0.
sorry.
37
Thank
to
you.
0 to 2 to 0.
That's why you need 2 co-secretaries, because it takes 2 co-secretaries to count, read it in. So we've got the right system. All right, we're going to move on. Thank you. And we're going to go on to preservations, and I'll be handing it to whoever's going to handle this. I think it's going to be
Michelle's
I'm gonna do
start us
the
off.
preamble.
Okay, you preamble it up, and we'll figure it out.
Sometimes an application has a couple of parts. I'm sure every application you all have seen has a couple of parts. But some applications have parts that are not subject to review by the community board, but rather those parts of an application go directly to the Landmarks Preservation Commission staff. And that's by statute. What we review on the community board are those parts of the application that go in front of the Landmarks Preservation Commission commissioners. If a part of an application is not subject to review by a community board, that applicant is supposed to tell Jessie so that she doesn't put it on the agenda for us to review. But this month, depending how you look at it, I think we got lucky because a couple of parts of an application that are normally not subject to review by us and therefore normally don't go in front of the Landmarks Preservation Commission commissioners ended up on our agenda. So we were able to talk about it. However, I just want to tell you, we asked Landmarks Preservation Commission, how come we couldn't look at these parts of the application? But I'm not asking you to do that tonight. I'm telling you that on number 2, section part A is not subject to our vote. And on application number 3, part C, expanding the penthouse, that application was actually withdrawn by the applicant, which, depending on how you think about it, may be a good or a bad thing. There's a penthouse there, the expansion, that application has been withdrawn. That's all I wanted to say as a form of preamble, to be continued about how much we review. I think the more we can review, the better for the community and the city as a whole. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Kay to talk about 42 West 70th Street.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
We have 3 proposals, 3 resolutions. And if you agree with us, then they'll be just voted on as a single unit. We've already done the work figuring out what is and isn't relevant for us as a community board. So we have some slides to show you. It's always fun to have pictures. All 3 of the buildings in front of us are townhouses. And so that's very typical, obviously, for our community and also for the historic districts where we do most of our work. Okay, so there's a couple things going on. There is the front facade work that is proposed, and that's basically on that parlor floor to replace a window and just kind of unify and make the front facade make more sense. And so this is the final product that we're looking at. And then in the rear, the exciting thing about the rear is that they have an L extension in the rear, and for once, in our experience, they are not expanding the footprint of the L extension, the rear facade. They are changing the fenestration, the windows. And so to make a long story a little bit shorter, we as a community, as a committee, preservation committee, resolved to approve the proposed front and rear facade changes as reasonably appropriate to the character of the historic district. Now, this is the roof. We just took a quick look on the roof there. This, as Michelle told you, was not for us to opine about. Oh, that didn't stop us, of course, but it's, we don't need to consider that in our voting. So this is yeah, Mark, that's the next building there. So let's hold off on that one. You, Stephen, you want to do vote each resolution?
Can we just clarify something though? So we're voting now on 42 West 70th, and are we voting on A or B or one of those?
No, we're voting on 51 West 70th.
What? No?
No.
No.
What's this one?
I'm sorry, that was 40 West.
Yeah, just
40 West 70th.
Oh, West 70. I'm sorry, was that the wrong one?
Yeah.
Let's just restart again here, because I think you had different pictures than different things. So let's restart here. Which one do you want to start with, Kay? What are we going to?
Well, we typically go from south to north. We're superstitious. So I think these came through in the wrong order. So yeah, let's. I'm sorry, Mark. You're quite right. 42.
So let's just redo this quickly, just for any confusion. We're gonna do 42 West 70th Street. Mark, you're gonna pull up, which is what we did have up, but perhaps you can make sure your notes are for 42 West.
Yes, and it's a little bit similar. So yeah. Okay.
We're not looking at part A.
Yes.
Looking at part A. So just for everyone's view, we're talking about 42 West 70th. Part A, we are no longer voting on. We are only going to be voting on Part B and K.
And C.
My apologies for the confusion. Yeah, so the front facade doesn't concern us. We're looking at the, let's look at the rear. Okay. Here's the rear. Okay. On 42 West 70th, the committee voted to disapprove the proposed rear fenestration with because we took a long time to look at this. The removal of an interesting but very much decaying kind of rear sort of architectural feature there, which is, as you can see there, I think in its
bay window.
Yeah, that bay window in its early days was a lovely thing, but it is no longer. However, so that didn't trouble us as much as it might have, but we were not happy about the proposed rear fenestration, the window layout on the rear of the facade. As you can see, as you're looking at the existing next to the proposed rear elevation, you can see what the idea was.
What we didn't like about the windows is kind of looks like 3 different types of windows.
Right, exactly.
Inconsistent, inappropriate with the historical character.
Didn't really hang together architecturally or historically, of course. So let's look at that. So our committee was unanimous in our approval of the, well, let's go to the stair bulkhead, sorry. There was a rather modest proposal to create a stair bulkhead and elevator overrun on the roof. So we were in approval of that. As I said, we were in, yep, there we go. We were also approving the removal of the bay window in the rear facade that we were looking at a moment ago, but we disapproved the proposed fenestration, and that's what we would like you to consider as well, so that we can go to the Landmarks Commission and voice our concerns particularly about that. As I said, we are unanimous, and so we recommend that you vote accordingly. So if you propose the resolution, you're doing what we did. I mean, if you approve the resolution, you're doing what we did to approve certain features and then disapprove the rear window layout.
Okay, so just to be clear, if you vote for this, you're approving for 2 aspects and disapproving another. You're approving the facade, you're approving the rooftop, but you're not approving the bay window. That's the recommendation that came out. So let's have some questions. Paige, I see that your hand is raised.
Just parenthetically, I agree that we voted down the right way for the excessive fenestration for the 3 floors, but I don't think it's wise to always condone renovation, removal. There really isn't anything wrong with that bay window that a good lick of paint or some body filler that you would use on an automobile could repair. So I just, it's a cautionary tale because that is probably one of the remaining elements of that building that matches the front architecture very well. So I would ask that maybe the committee might suggest that while the owner did not accept the option of repairing the bay window, it should be noted that in future projects where these things come up, we would like the Landmark Commission's opinion as to whether or not something can be salvaged. Otherwise, we're going to start losing all of the details and it will just be brick walls with cheap Marvin windows in them. Thank you.
We can certainly raise that at the commission.
Thank
I
you.
think that's why we approved in principle
Any other questions
the
or
removal of
thoughts?
the bay window.
So do you want to call the question? I don't.
Well,
see it.
Ethel has their hand up.
Oh, can only.
Just a
limited.
quick clarifying thing on Paige's last point. I'm not clear. Paige, if you are cautioning that the bay window is an important feature and would benefit from some careful restoration and work, hasn't the committee now voted to do away with the bay window? And yours is a point in which perhaps you don't agree with that. May I understand that?
The only thing that I've focused on is that we turned down the excessive fenestration being the same for 3 floors because we don't have.
And let the bay window go?
No, I think the bay window should stay. They should figure out a way to get that repaired.
No.
Okay.
Basically, we're rejecting their proposal for the rear.
Correct.
Okay.
But I
Thank
think
you.
they should consider keeping the bay window. That's all.
Well,
I don't
that's
mean to
what
make a big deal.
I'm interested in that point as well. I agree with that. I just wanted to be clear. And I'm a little
Absolutely.
uncertain. So that's
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Hopefully that's been cleared up. We have 2 more hands now. Jay?
Yeah, unfortunately, for the first time in several years, I missed a preservation meeting because I was long distance out of the city. But I agree with Paige, and I did look at the resolution, but I don't have it in front of me. Can we simply, by consent, in addition to disapproving the proposed windows, also just simply add language saying that in addition to disapproving the windows, we are recommending or insisting, or whatever word you want to use, that the bay window, if feasible, be repaired and restored. Just add some language so it makes it clear what the sentiment of the committee and the board is. And so I agree with Ethel and I agree with Paige, and I think it's easily solved by inserting some language into the final resolution.
Okay.
Michelle, are you comfortable with
Yeah,
that?
I could live with that if what it says right now approves in principle the removal of the bay window, but if that's
You
not
wanna just
strong enough
strike
language,
that
we can
and,
change it.
Let's strike that, and if everyone's all right with that, we'll just strike that and make that part of our general disapproval of the rear proposal.
Great.
Thanks.
Ira?
Oops.
Ira,
you're muted.
Normally, we put this in where we get to vote on issues A, B, C, D separately. And I don't know why this is being done a little differently. I have a somewhat different opinion, I have a somewhat similar opinion, but I see we're doing the same thing further down line as well, where we have multiple issues. And if there's only a single issue we're going to discuss on the next 2, that's fine. But if there are multiple issues, can we just agree that we can vote on each issue individually and not repeat the same discussion for the next two?
Yeah, I think what we feel like we need to break these things down in Preservation Committee. Obviously, if the board disagrees and wants to, challenge that, that's fine. Otherwise, we present the resolution for each building as a whole, and if that suits you, great.
But we
And
haven't
Ira,
always done.
if we
haven't
do it
always done that.
We've tried to do our best, but if we did that, we'd have 15, 16, 17, 18 votes each time. If you guys want to
We've done it with
discuss
2 or 3 in the past.
I think we've done them when they've been unique, not every single one. Normally there is a whole. My suggestion in the proper place for this conversation is to add preservation, not at full board. We'll see if we can accommodate what you want. And if you want to have a conversation with chairs, please do so at the next preservation. Which is the one that you want to break into multiple ones?
Well, I haven't had a chance to look at all these, but I think
We're not gonna
certainly,
do all of them. Which one do
certainly
you want to do?
51 West 70th has the same issue. There are multiple issues here. There's it's the same in any of these.
Unfortunately, right now, the way the form is, we only have a space for 2 extra votes, so we could not do what you're proposing right now.
Okay,
We've not
but
done it that way. So we're going to finish this vote. I'll try and accommodate, and I'd ask that if you have concerns about this, you bring it up with the chairs,
I'll-
not in the middle of the full board
we'll
meeting.
do it another time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's all the questions. I think we have a friendly amendment, which Shelley always reminds me is no such thing as, but let's vote on 42 West 70th Street. You're voting to support certain aspects, but other aspects are not. And I believe we're using new language to accommodate people's. So please, let's raise your hands if you're supporting 42 West 70th resolution. Okay, let's all just continue to wait. I'm going to ask everyone who wants to vote to do so now. We're going to start winding down. And we are going to hold it now. So Bev, you want to read the digital hands?
33.
My physical hand is up. So if we can take them down. Great. Everyone voting against, please raise your hand, digital hand now. If anybody is, at this point, I think I'm the only vocal hand, so please reach out if you have. Just speak out at any point. Again, if you're voting against this, I want to make sure, I think some people are bubble voting, but I see 2 hands up.
2.
Okay. Shelley, Christian, you want to help lower those 2 hands? Anybody abstaining? Okay, let's hold off for a few. You want to read that, Bev?
3.
Great, let's take those down. And for cause, anybody for cause on this? Great, so Bev, you want to read the vote?
34 to 2 to 3 to 0.
Great, okay. Let's move on to 51 West 70th Street. To clarify our A-B part of this, I remember, Michelle, you said another one is removed, but I think it's from the next one, correct?
Yeah, this part C was withdrawn. There's no application of LPC either in front of the staff or the commissioners to expand the penthouse. So
Part C for this one. So we're only
withdrawn.
talking about 51 West 70th A and B. Go ahead, Kay.
Okay, and again, if we can take a look at that. So here we are, it's a brownstone. And it's a brownstone that had many years ago, its front stoop removed. And so really the heart of this proposal is to make given that the restoration of a front stoop is not in the plans at this point. Here, there we go. To make the front fenestration and the front facade make a little bit more sense visually, and have it make more sense for the interior of the building. So now you can take a look there on the left of your screen. A couple of things going on there. You can see on the parlor level where the front door had been. And that makes for an interesting window layout, especially when you look at it next to the other two windows on that parlor floor level. So that part of it will be addressing to that. And then looking down at the basement level, the lower level there, there is a door. Currently, there are two doors in this very relatively narrow building. And so the idea is to kind of unify that, make one of the doors a window and then make a better entrance to the building. And there you can see at the sketch on the right. So you can see both on the parlor level, making the windows work together visually, and then at the lower level, a better entrance arrangement and eliminating one of the doors and making it into a window that matches the window beside it. That is the front. And then in the rear, as you can see, the proposal is relatively modest, and there it is. This is a building with an L extension. There you see it, three floor L extension, basement and parlor and second floor. They are going to keep the footprint in the proposed renovation, and they are going to open up the fenestration a bit. And you can see that, and they're going to add a terrace on the parlor level of the rear facade. There you can, there. Any questions about that? And then, as Michelle said, we were invited not to express an opinion on the rooftop. That's going to be handled at the staff level.
Okay, any questions? Okay, do we want to call the vote? Great. So all of those who are voting to support this reso, please raise their hand now.
Steve, are we just voting for A first and then B, or are we voting for the whole package?
I think that we are going to be voting for A and B. Unfortunately, if you
the whole package,
you have to, you know, you're against one, then you may have to vote against both of them this time. We can address this in future meetings, unfortunately.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So again, all those for this, we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to put my hand up. So Bev, you want to count the amount of people for?
33 digital plus 1.
Great. Christian, you want to lower those? All of those against. Okay. I think we see, you see those, Bev?
2.
Okay, let's lower the hands. Anybody abstaining? Great. Well, let's hold on. There was an abstention, so let's hold. You see that,
1.
Bev? Great. Let's lower that. And anybody for cause? Great. Bev, do you want to read that into the record?
Sorry, I missed it. I'll vote for. Sorry about that.
Sure, Sarah. Let's add one more.
35 to 2 to 1 to 0.
Okay, so it passes. And let's go on to the third, 323 West 87th Street. And this one, I'm assuming we are voting on all pieces, A, B, and C, correct?
You got it.
Okay, and then just as a reminder, unfortunately, if you're either going to have to clump them as a for or against, and we could address a way to break this down in the future. But for today, we don't have that ability. So you got to go all in or all out, just to clarify.
Yeah, and so basically you're either agreeing with our committee's assessment of the situation or you, not. Okay, so 323 West 87th is a townhouse. It's a relatively short townhouse. In other words, it's got 3 stories plus the lower level. Many of the buildings we consider are taller. So the proposal here is to do some stonework restoration, replacement of the existing transom and French doors on the front facade on the top floor, and then a rooftop addition with a stair bulkhead and skylight on the top, And then replacement of fenestration on the rear and extension on the ground and parlor floors down below.
Yeah, Kay, I'm sorry. I think
Yeah.
I think the front facade, according to the resolution, LPC staff has advised that the proposed front facade work is eligible for staff level approval.
That's
It will
right.
not be heard at a public hearing. I'm sorry. I didn't
That's
point
right.
that out earlier to the.
Yeah, that's fine.
board.
That's fine. But you know, that gives you a clearer picture of the whole project. But yeah, we're being asked to opine on the rear facade
Yes, sir.
and on the rooftop addition. And there you have the proposal. Well, we of course always look at sight lines to make sure that the proposed addition isn't overly visible or visible at all from the street, from the opposite side of the street, the sidewalk on the opposite side of the street. So there you have the view indicated by the dotted line. And we felt that this, because of its modest nature and the proposed cladding and being within what we often, and LPC often approves, that this is reasonably appropriate to this character of the historic district. And so we were unanimous on this one, 8 in favor and 0. And so we recommend this for your vote.
Great. Any questions? Okay, do we want to call the vote? All those in favor, let's raise your hands. Okay, let's give a few more seconds. If you want to raise your hand digitally, please do so now. Bev, do you see that? And I got my physical hand raised up.
So 33 plus 1, 34.
There is 34 now. I don't know if you want to say change it. Exactly. So we'll move it to 35. Now it just went up again, but what do you want to do?
35 plus 1, 36.
Thank you. And let's lower that, Christian. All of those against. But can you lower it again? I think there was a little bit of a glitch. Thank you. All of you who are voting against, please raise your hand. Okay. All of you, anybody who is abstaining, please raise their hand. See that, Bev?
3.
Nope, it's moving a bit. So let's hold again.
Actually, it's
down
2.
Down to 2, so we're going to hold. Thanks, Doug. Thanks for the help there. See your hands going up. Let's go to 2. And let's lower those. And then anybody for cause. Great. You want to read that?
36 to 0 to 2 to 0.
Thank you. So it passes.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks,
very
Bob.
much.
Thank you.
Our Preservation
Thanks, Kay.
Committee team. And let's go on to
Thank you.
the final event of the evening, our in-person and remote task force. Elizabeth, you'll be talking about a resolution.
Hi, everyone. So thanks to everyone for their participation and input on this task force in recent weeks and months. As all of you know, by the nature of the fact that we're meeting virtually tonight, due to the pandemic and even beforehand, we have addressed a lot of issues about how, if, when, and where we meet. It's impacted community boards in a really big way. We are looking at the task force, just by way of background before I go into the resolution. At the task force, we're looking across 2 main areas. One is how, if, and when we host meetings. We divide that into 2 categories, full board meetings and committee meetings. Then we also look at the people requirements for when, how, and if people join in person. And we divide that into 2 categories, board members and members of the public. We've had some really exciting, thoughtful conversations. I want to thank every single person from this board and from the community who's on this call who has contributed so far. We want to be as inclusive as possible. The goal of the task force is to try to present as much information and sort of factual comments as we can to decision makers as they determine in the coming weeks and months how, when, and if we are meeting virtually versus in person. And it's been, again, a very productive conversation so far. Cutting across all these issues, as we know, are issues related to public health, infrastructure, and the technology that's going to be required in this new era. We now have a publicly listed group of task force members. That list is evolving. So if any of you from the full board tonight are interested in joining, please contact me or Max or Steven, and we're happy to include you in that process. We plan as a task force to do 2 to 3 more meetings before we pause for the summer in August. Most task forces have an end date. The ideal goal would be to have the end of that meeting in August, but as we all know with this pandemic, that could change. But we really encourage your participation. And again, I'm grateful to everyone who has participated thus far. I am speaking tonight because we have a specific matter that was brought to the task force by a new member of the task force and presented as a resolution. And we would ask board members tonight to consider it. What I'd like to do is ask if Max is available to share the current resolution that was distributed to everyone on the screen so that we could then make sure everyone has seen it. And if that's not possible, I'd like to have it presented by the presenter of the resolution, which is Ken Coughlin.
No, we're gonna pull it up, Elizabeth. We'll pull it up. We'll get it up.
Okay, great. And then just so that for those who didn't see the email that came out, we did a meeting last night where this resolution was voted on. We can present the resolution right now, which I'm happy to do, but just wanted to make sure everyone had seen it. It was a resolution in support of a specific piece of legislation by State Senator Brad Hoylman, which was the adoption of Senate, I believe Senate resolution or Senate piece of legislation 7261 and 88155, which are bills before the Senate and the Assembly to amend the open meetings law to permit but not require public bodies, including community boards and their committees, to meet using virtual platforms such as they have been using during the pandemic, as well as hybrid meetings taking place both via electronic means and in a physical location. Before I turn it over to Ken, I would just like, because I've gotten a lot of—
We're gonna have Max do it, just so you know, Elizabeth. Second.
Okay,
Max,
sorry. Yeah, it's Max, thank you. But I mean, just for the presentation of the, if there are any friendly, my understanding is that there has been a friendly amendment that has been discussed in recent hours. And I would like for Ken and others who have proposed that friendly amendment to speak now so that we can update it so that members of the full board know exactly what they would be voting on. The final thing I'll mention before I turn it over to them is just that I think it's really important that the ongoing conversations about how, if, and when we meet in person are ongoing. And I think it would be really important after the friendly amendment is proposed that somebody who knows Albany much better than I do speak to exactly what this legislation means so that our board members, before they vote, actually have an understanding on what exactly this legislation means and what they're voting on. So I'll stop there and turn it over. Stephen, I can turn it over to Max. I can turn it over to Ken, who proposed the resolution, whatever you would like me to do.
Well, what I want to do is just have an order to how this happened. So Max, can you please pull up the current language that was presented for us to vote on?
Sure. And let me just clarify with that. The one that was voted on last night, not the proposed friendly amendment, correct? Okay.
Let's put up the original one that was voted on, because that's where we need to start.
Sure. Just give me 1 minute then, and I will do that. And
great.
I believe every member of the board received that text late last night. So you should all have it. And if I could ask the proposers of the resolution and those who may be proposing friendly amendments to just be ready after Max puts it on camera.
Again, I just want to have an order so people aren't confused. But as we do this, my understanding is that we voted on something last night. There may be a predetermined friendly amendment that we may discuss, but I think we should start from where everyone voted last night.
Correct. And I believe it's what I read just now. It is the resolution that I read 5 minutes ago. Everyone has received this. And Max, if you have, I believe you have in front of you, I have it too, but just the vote as it was done at the task force meeting, which I believe was in the minutes of the meeting as well, which was voted on. It was supported 9, I believe it was 9 to 1 to 1 to 0. And
That's
then
right.
non-task force members were 0 to 0 to 1 to 0.
Okay, you guys pulled that up quick. Max, can you just read it again? This is what was voted on last night, and let's start
Sure.
there. Baseline.
You'd like me to hear? What? I'll share my screen again and I'll read it.
Thank you. And let's keep it up.
Be it resolved that Community Board 7 Manhattan supports the adoption of S7261 and A8155, identical bills before the New York State Senate and Assembly, respectively, which would amend the open meetings law to permit but not require public bodies, including community boards and their committees, to meet using the virtual platforms that they have been using during the pandemic, as well as hybrid meetings taking place both via electronic means and in a physical location.
So just to clarify, Elizabeth, if there's a friendly amendment, it is you that will be accepting it, not Ken, not anybody else.
I will be accepting it, but I would like it to be presented by either the proposer of the resolution or the person who wants to propose a friendly amendment.
So it's my understanding.
Let's try to keep this. Let's try to keep this moving. We've worked a lot on this. You know, I believe it was, and I see his hand raised, but I believe it was Jay who proposed the friendly amendment. If it's okay with everyone, I'd like to turn it over to him to present that. I believe he's discussed it with a number of people today.
Okay, so Jay, do you?
Is that okay with everyone?
Jay, do you want to present the friendly amendment?
Yeah, can we go back to the screen? And I think that let me start with an explanation, and at some point then I think Max will be able to put the amended version on the screen. But
I can do that now. Would you like me to do that now?
And well, I'd rather, whatever you want to do, I'd rather see the screen anyway. Why don't you wait a couple of minutes?
Okay.
I'll explain it. First, let me start out by saying that I agree with the substance and purpose of the Hoylman bill. I was the one vote at last night's task force meeting against the resolution, not because I disagree with the substance and purpose of the bill, but the description in the resolution of what the bill does was, in my opinion, inaccurate and misleading. And during the discussion last night, it confirmed my belief that some of the people that voted for the resolution supporting the bill did so because they were under the impression that legislation of this ilk would be needed to authorize remote voting by public bodies. So that, in fact, is not the case. And I believe that it needed clarification. And after the meeting, just by way of background, I sent last night a note to Ken, who had proposed the original resolution, and suggested that with a further discussion, we might be able to come to a resolution of the resolution, if you will, agreement on language, because of the fact that neither one of us in actuality had a problem with the intent of the bill. So long story short, Ken, to his credit, who had originally been unwilling to do that, recognized that there was room for a discussion, and we exchanged drafts of possible amended resolution. In fact, Ken drafted the first one, and we commented back and forth. And by this morning, we reached an agreement as to an amended resolution which declares the board's support for Brad Hoylman's bill, but clarifies exactly what the bill does and what the result would be. So let me try to explain it as quickly and as clearly as I can. First
Jake,
of all,
can I stop you right there just to make sure everyone on the board and is everyone following us from this point? This is, a task force where we have been working on a variety of matters. A resolution came to us on a very specific matter.
Yes.
Jay brings a lot of legislative experience on this, and I have asked him to present sort of what the legislation actually means so that it can inform the 50 members on this call what they're going to be voting on tonight. If that's okay with everyone, I want to move forward. And I think that it is, but that's the reason why we're doing this tonight for everyone.
Okay.
So I'm going to turn it back over to Jay as the head of the task force to sort of present that.
First of all, the existing law already references video conferencing. So it is not necessary for any statutory solution to whether or not video conferencing is permitted by public bodies. It is under the existing law. So I think that there was a misimpression that it was necessary to support this bill in order to have state law approve video conferencing. That's not the case. It's already permitted. There's also no specific definition of video conferencing in the law, and the rule with regard to legislation where there's a term used that's not specifically defined, the rule is that it's given its common usage or meaning. In today's environment, because obviously this is an old statute, in today's environment, I can say with almost complete certainty that the term video conferencing in the existing law would include Zoom and Ring Central and Microsoft Teams and all of the latest teleconferencing platforms. So that is not an issue. And in fact, that's not what this proposed bill addresses. This bill has an anachronistic clause in it, which basically says that if a public body chooses to use video conferencing, it has to notify the public as to whether there's any public location where they can attend the meeting. And if there is no such thing, which would cover the situation that we find ourselves in tonight, then the public can have access to any location where a member of that body is participating remotely in the meeting. What that means in very simple terms is that under the existing law, if it wasn't currently suspended, which it is, as we all know, under the current law, if we were doing this meeting as we are virtually, then 20 members of the public could come knocking at Ken's door or my door or Steve's door and would be entitled to participate in the meeting from that location. The first thing that this bill does is to eliminate that requirement, so that now if there's a virtual meeting, this bill would require that the public body notice any location that is open to the public, but it eliminates the requirement that if there is no such location, the public can insist on going to any participant's location. That's the first thing it does. And it should do that. That's an anachronistic requirement that doesn't make sense in the modern environment. The second thing that it does is establish requirements for the minutes of such meetings, and it requires that the minutes contain reports of certain things, including the attendees, including any electronic or virtual or remote problems that occur. And interestingly, it requires that the minutes contain a report of when each participant in the meeting signed into the meeting and when each participant leaves, which I suspect might affect some of our members from time to time. So that's what the bill does. It doesn't, again, it doesn't require or permit or authorize teleconference meeting. They are already permitted by the existing law. So that being said, you know, Ken and I back and forth agreed to leave the first portion of the bill, which says that CB7 supports the adoption of this legislation, but we changed the descriptive language in the resolution to accurately reflect what those two things that the bill actually does.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
So let's get some people's
If there are any
feedback. Roberta?
questions,
So if I could just take back to order the meeting. I mean, I think thank you, Jay, for that. The new, and I believe that amendment was accepted as friendly.
Well, you are accepting it as friendly, Elizabeth. You are accepting.
I am accepting it. I want to make sure everyone else on the task force is accepting it as
That's not
friendly.
the way it
We
works.
can go to
You're-
questions.
I'm going to kind of jump in here because we got to keep this moving. You've accepted this. It's up. We're going to keep it up so everyone can see it. You are the chair. So if you accept it, it's up. I think everyone sees that it seems everyone's okay. So let's kind of move forward and let's get into the questions. Roberta?
My problem is that this was discussed at the meeting, but then the committee voted on it after the meeting. And
that's again, Stephen, you weren't at the meeting last night. I was. I'd like to just make sure that I represent this as accurately as possible. We voted on a resolution that was initially presented about 10 minutes ago. We have received communication that the presenter of the resolution and another person on the task force have proposed a friendly amendment. That is what's before us right now. So I leave to you, Stephen, to decide how we want to address that. But what was voted on is not what's before us tonight. What was voted on was a different resolution. What is here is a friendly resolution, and I think something that could be more, quite frankly, palatable to the full board as we vote tonight.
I think this is, again, let's just continue to move on. I think that this is no different than any other friendly amendment that's accepted live. It just got done beforehand. So the chair has accepted this friendly amendment. It's in front of us, and we're going to do an up and down vote of it, and we'll continue on. Ken, why don't you speak yourself? Your name has been mentioned about a half dozen times.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to clarify that Jay and I did not pull an all-nighter. Just, you know, since we're being technically accurate here. And also, and I'm fine with this wording. I didn't think the original, I agree the original wording was kind of shorthand and probably if you parsed it technically not completely accurate. And this is fine by me. I just want to make sure people understand that in supporting this, we're not saying that we are necessarily going to hold remote meetings or hybrid meetings. It just gives us the power to do this without special dispensation from the governor. Right now, we're sort of on the month-to-month status with emergency orders being extended by the governor. So we're sort of at the mercy of her good graces. What if Ron DeSantis became governor, for instance? Things could change. So changing the open meetings law, bringing it into the 21st century is really important because it just gives us that option. If we feel it's prudent to meet remotely or hybrid way, we don't have to wait for the governor to act or any other community board or any other public body. I was going to say something else, but I forgot. So
thank you, Ken. Susan.
Thanks so much. I've got two specific questions. The first one is, how does this relate to the ability for people to vote when they're not in person?
It doesn't. It doesn't address that issue.
So it's not.
Well, Jay, doesn't it allow? I mean, it allows board members to fully participate remotely.
Well, again, Ken, with respect, right now under existing law, even when the governor, if the emergency declaration of the governor expires, and the existing law goes back into effect, public bodies still, without any change in the law, can hold meetings by video conferencing.
Right, but we'd have to allow the public access to every location.
If without this bill, you'd have to allow the public to be present at any remote location, which is why I support it, because I think that requirement is anachronistic and should be deleted from the law.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think we've heard from Jay and from Ken.
I'm just answering the question.
I know you are. What I'd like to do is, if possible, get to people who have not yet asked questions related to the resolution.
Excuse me,
Roberta.
Excuse me. I was asking a specific question. I have not gotten a specific answer. With all due respect, I'd really like to hear about that because it seems to me like this is a really important part of it. I've got a second question, which I'd like to get to, but first I'd like to get a straight answer to this question. Thank you.
Well, Jay,
I thought I answered the question, Susan. This bill in the resolution that's before the board doesn't say anything about voting. But that being said, under existing law, if a body chooses to have a meeting by video conferencing, the members who attend by video conferencing can vote.
Fine. Okay. My second question, so that, in other words, fine. My second question has to do with attendance. When you talk about attendance in this bill, does that mean how does that relate to whether or not your picture is on or off? Because, for example, I could log on to the meeting and never have my picture on. You have no idea how long I'm at the meeting. So how is that monitored?
Again, this bill does not address that or a whole host of issues, which, just so I can expand for a second, is one of the reasons why I was upfront with Ken when we were discussing language, and I reserved my right to abstain on this, is because there are a whole host of issues that teleconferencing under modern platforms raises. That's one of them, and it's a legitimate issue not included in this bill. And let's remember something. The open meetings law applies to every single public body in the state of New York. It includes the state legislature, the city council, every commission, every agency. And while we sometimes think we're the center of the world, community boards are not necessarily way at the top of that list. So I think it's premature to discuss and to vote on any of these issues, because at some point, if the state government, the legislature, and the governor, when things get back or close to normal, and with current modern platforms, I think they're going to have to address the issue of teleconferencing / remote or virtual meetings. And I think it needs a comprehensive approach.
Susan,
This is
I think-
a tiny little piece.
Thank you.
of it.
Thank you, Jay. So
I think that's, hopefully that's helped with your,
Right.
to
I'd
answer
like
your
to continue.
question.
Thank you. So I'd just like to make my point, which is that I agree with what Jay is saying, and I made this point at one of the task force meetings, which is that I am deeply uncomfortable with our board having an opinion on this kind of thing. And I plan to abstain on this because, as Jay says, it's premature. And I heard at one of the meetings, someone described that our elected officials are influenced by political decisions, and they're not necessarily there to be concerned about our health and our well-being, and that we need to take this into our own control. I do not think we should be taking that position. We live in a society that's ruled by law, and we should be abiding by the laws that are set by our government, not by our community board. Thank you very much.
So I want to level set this because I feel we've already spent a tremendous amount of time. We're going to go through and have everyone raise their hand. We're not going to answer every question. Jay, I appreciate it, but we're not going to sit here for another hour and a half and answer these questions. That's what the committee meeting is for. I appreciate your thing. Don't need it. We're going to keep going through
But
this.
Steve,
We're going to
Steve,
keep going through this. I'm going to
Steve-
mute you. We're going to let people speak. We're not going to have this chaos that's happening. People want to have an orderly meeting, and we're going to do that. Let's let people think, and we're not going to have 20-minute sessions every time somebody has a thing. Don't
Steve,
need anybody.
I'm just
Don't need you to speak right now. Thank you. We're going to let the other people who haven't spoke yet. We can't keep having the 2 or 3 people dominate 90% of the conversation that goes on this committee. It is the #1 talk thing about.
I'm the one who proposed the resolution.
Let other people speak and you'll have your chance. But there is a big problem on our community board that a handful of people take up 90% of their space, and it has to change. So other people are waiting, and they're going to speak. Courtney, please speak. Thank you.
I just want to make sure I understand, because I think what this is saying is it feels limited to this one piece that is the interpretation to include members' homes, right? And my concern is that if we were to approve this, are we not tacitly saying that we approve of eliminating the requirement to meet in person overarchingly? I just want to make sure I am understanding that kind of dichotomy.
We're voting to approve these bills, which are limiting. And if you feel that is, then you should vote against this. That's what our roles are here.
Steve,
these
can the
are
person
bills-
who proposed the resolution answer the questions?
No, because I'm
I
talking.
mean, so far Jay
I'm
has
speaking, and I'm
answered the
speaking,
question.
Ken. If I have to kick you out of the meeting, I'll do so. Okay? I'm not going to warn you again. We're going to have order. You'll have your chance to speak at the end. This is something I said in the beginning, Elizabeth. This is your thing, not Ken's, not Jay's. You proposed it. We're going to have order. This happens every time you guys put something forward. I'm not going to say it again. Your hand is up, and you have your chance to retaliate, to speak to things. We're not going to go back and forth. Courtney raised her thing. I'm going to go to Andrew. I'm going to go to Rich, and we're going to have other people, and we're going to have order, and we're going to stop having a handful of people take up all of the time limit that we have. Okay? Andrew is quietly waiting. It's his turn to speak, not yours again, Ken. The back and forth and the dialogue is for the task force. And if it's not ready, we'll kick it back to task force. That's what we'll do. If there's a lot of debate, we'll kick it back. I'm not going to say it again, and I'm not going to warn again. Andrew, please speak.
Thank you. So I'm at fault because I was not at the task force meeting. I was having a similar question to Susan. I thought I may have known the answer. Then the response confused me a bit more. My main concern here would be making a judgment on or approving something that would allow people to vote remotely. And I'm not sure what this bill does, if it would allow people to vote remotely or not. I understand that people can, boards, public bodies can meet remotely, but I'm not clear on whether or not members of that body, such as a community board member, can vote remotely under the current law, sans the governor's current executive order.
Thank you, Andrew. Christian. Christian?
Yes, I was going to say that my interpretation of that is that under the existing law, which allows video conferencing, people under the video can vote, and that is in essence voting remotely. So yes, people can vote remotely under the current law. So all we're doing, the major point here is that they are removing the requirement that in any location that you're doing video, you have to allow the public. You're just doing away with that. But yes, if it stays as it is, you can vote remotely, yes.
Go ahead, Rich Robbins.
Thank you. So as I understand it, under the existing law, members are not allowed to attend meetings remotely as members unless they open their location to the public. So if there's a vote and any member is attending remotely, we'd be attending as a member of the public, not as a member, and we'd not be allowed to vote. What this law does, in my understanding, is that it removes that requirement to open locations to the public, so it does allow us to vote remotely. My thoughts on this, number one, we've shown clearly that remote participation and remote voting work. Board members are clearly able to contribute in hybrid meetings. Tonight, Catherine was a great example of how a board member can contribute even when she was nearly 5,000 miles away. There are any number of reasons why board members and potential board members might not be able
Point
to
of order.
ranging from sickness, mobility issues,
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Jay, please let Rich speak.
I have a point of
you had
order.
said that
I heard your point of
final
order. I'm
warning.
holding your point of order. I'm allowing Rich to speak, and I'll do so. You've spoken quite a bit, Jay. This isn't about, this is exactly what we talked about. He is speaking. Everyone's going to have an opportunity. Get out a pen, write it down, and you could speak about it. He's simply speaking his opinion, and he's going to be allowed to. Go ahead, Rich.
So Stephen, I believe before I was interrupted, you did say you gave a final warning about people interrupting.
Come on, Rich. Do you want to keep speaking or not?
I do, and I don't want to be interrupted.
Go ahead. I'm telling him to be quiet so you could speak.
All right. So there are any number of reasons why board members and potential board members might not be able to attend in person, ranging from sickness, mobility issues, travel, work, family, or others. We make board membership extremely difficult, and we're ruling out many people from applying to join the board. We have also lost a number of great people who aren't able to attend all our meetings. And how many more haven't joined? How many people with school-age children have been able to join our board? How many people under 50? There could also be scenarios where we want to be able to have remote meetings without needing permission from New York State, perhaps due to weather, future pandemics, a terrorist attack, who knows? I've never been swayed by the thinking, this is how we've always done it, so we should keep doing it that way. I think one real silver lining of the past 2 years is that we've shown how technology has made common things that weren't done in the past possible. We don't necessarily need to go back just because we used to do things a certain way or because things were a certain way when we signed up to join the board.
Thank you, Rich.
Bills.
Look,
I have one more.
I'm happy to have you speak for another minute or two.
Again. Am I allowed to speak or not?
Jay, Rich, if you can wrap it up, we appreciate it from a timing perspective.
Okay. I see the current bills as a first step. I'd love to see New York State require that all meetings are live streamed with video permanently posted online, which these bills don't do. Also, while the meetings allow people to attend remotely, I think we should embrace technology and always have remote meetings for all of our meetings. This is just allowing it, it's not requiring it. But tonight, we often comment on pending legislation. That's what we're doing here. And I urge everyone to support this resolution.
Thank you, Rich. Let's get to other
Stephen, I would just like to add, as the head of the task force, a very quick comment that I have received text messages and other things tonight from members of the public who I think have a right to come to a task force meeting, but who also are listening to tonight. And I would just encourage everyone who's speaking from the board tonight to recognize that members of the public are listening to you and they're commenting on your responses and your thoughts. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige.
I think this is amazing, but I draw the line where my public life and my private life collide. And I think while it sounds great that somebody's going to come and ring my doorbell and I'm going to invite them in for cocoa while we listen to a video conference, it's unsafe. You don't know who these people are. There has to be another way to solve it. And I think the simple way in my mind, when I'm dealing with clients and other city agencies that I don't know, I think we have a good network of public libraries and schools that are open to people. So kids and whoever can do that. And I would suggest that we change some of the times where we have our public meeting. So it can be in the late afternoon so kids can get the practice of participating in government. They can go to libraries if you live in a place or you're lost your cell phone and you don't have your computer. I don't know what the circumstances are, but I think that this crosses the line of people giving service in public, and many of us just, I'm exhausted. I don't need to have people call me or ring my doorbell to share information. There has to be another way to do it. Maybe it's the community office is open and minimally staffed. So those people who aren't fortunate enough to have a cell phone or whatever can go there. But I think that component of this has to change. I think everything else is admirable. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Paige. I think we want to go through anyone else who has their hands raised, who has not spoken yet. I see Howard Yaros as one of those people. I'll turn it over to him.
Oh, I don't think anyone's talking about having people come to their home. I think that requirement is in there, and that requirement basically requires us to meet in person. And I think there's a real value to meeting in person. It's very easy to have other screens open, as I'm sure I certainly do. When you're in a meeting, looking at someone face to face, you're paying more attention to them. You're looking at them like a real human being. And I think the quality of interaction is so much higher in person. I think we also owe it to our community to be there in person for them. The health issue, I definitely think as long as COVID is a risk, we shouldn't be meeting in person. I'm totally sympathetic to that. But to say it's more convenient and easier to sit at home, I don't think that's what the community board is for. I think we should be in person. We should be forced to sit there and listen to opposing views as opposed to multitasking and then just going on when our chance to speak comes up and just expressing the view we already have. I think it's important to share those views in person. And so I'm against, again, I'm not in favor of having people come visit me in my home, but I'm against a change that would enable the community board to be remote, be removed from the community, and be removed from each other.
Thank you, Howard. I see Melissa's hand and Peter's hand, and I would like to remind people that so many of these comments are so valuable. Our task force work continues, and we would very much like you to join these conversations at a task force meeting. I would want to remind people that we are voting on this specific resolution that's in front of you all tonight, turning it over to Melissa and then to Peter and then back to Stephen to figure out how we're going to vote on this. So
Thanks.
Melissa?
I should definitely be at more of these task force meetings. Just to, as for the resolution, I also just want to say on like the voting remotely piece, I think we sometimes forget that there is such an equity issue in terms of like who has the ability to spend hours physically attending a community board meeting, who has the resources to have someone watch your kids or isn't working right now. And I think whatever flexibility allows people to have more civic participation is just so important. And yes, there needs to be some amount of like turning out in person, and maybe there's a middle ground, but I just don't want us to forget that there is kind of a lot of privilege in the idea of being able to turn out in person for everything. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Peter, you're next.
I'd like to comment in favor of both options. Doing it remotely, as we've been doing the last 2 years, and having some space where people can participate, be it in a library or at the office, so they can do it both ways. I, for one, like doing it this way because I'm somewhat hard of hearing and my vision isn't so good. So this has been a lot better than having to go to a large space to meet. Other people who don't have the facility for doing it remotely this way could go to the office or a library. So we should have it both ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And before we go to, I think, our final two hands that are raised, and I'll double check to make sure there are no more than two. We have looked at this issue on the task force, as I mentioned at the outset, from two different ways. We've looked at it in terms of what is required of Community Board 7 members. What is required of them to go in person versus attending virtually? Should that be a higher standard than what is the subset of that, which is the public? And I think I can speak only anecdotally, but from the task force, the majority of people and the people who have come to our meetings believe that having and democratizing participation by the public is very important right now. Having them have a virtual option is very important. The question is, for our 50 members of the board, how do we determine for voting? Several amazing issues have been raised tonight. How we vote, when we vote, who shows up, what is the reason for not coming to a meeting for the 50 board members? Those are issues that the task force is discussing. That is not on the table tonight, but it is something that is extremely important and something that I think whoever with the borough presidents and with our legislators are going to have to work on. The second issue is really looking at the importance of technology and how and when these meetings happen and we do things virtually versus in person. And those are bigger issues than what is being on the table tonight. Tonight is a specific piece of legislation that was brought to this task force by a member of the task force who would like there to be a vote on it. That is what is in front of everyone's screens tonight and what we're asking people to vote on. So with that in mind, I would like to just turn over to, I guess, to Ken and Jay for maybe no more than 1 minute each to summarize this resolution. And then if it's okay with Stephen and with the rest of the board, we vote on it as a task force tonight, because that is what we were asked to do.
There is a member of the public with their
Member
hand
of the
raised.
public with their hand up.
Oh, that's great. I would love to hear from the member of the public first. Thank you. I'm not sure who that is, but if we could give them permission to speak, that would be great.
Joy, we're making you, you can speak, Joy.
Thank you. I clicked on the thing that said unmute on your tab instead of on my mute button. Yeah, I'm very interested in this task force. I wanted to attend the public hearing that I think was in March, but I was unable to ever get any information about it because it was not on the CB7 website and nobody answered my emails about it. So I wasn't there virtually or in live. But I'm actually kind of confused what everybody's arguing about, because if I understood what Jay and Ken said, and Elizabeth, you too, the only thing on the agenda right now to discuss is not whether you should have live or virtual or hybrid meetings. It's whether you want to support this bill that basically protects you against having me say, well, my computer's broken, I'm coming to your house to participate in this meeting, which you don't want me to do. So I'm a little confused. I think there's huge issues here. I'm not going to give you my opinion on whether meetings should be public, because that's not what's on your agenda. I can't talk. It's not what's on your agenda right now. I'm not going to give you my opinion, but I'm confused why you guys are all arguing with each other about whether meetings should be public.
Well, look, if you want to join Community Board 7, you've summarized a lot of this in a way that I think none of us were able to tonight. I want to go to Jay and to Ken.
I considered that and chose not to.
No, but thank you for your comments on this. This is a very specific piece of legislation, and the work of the task force and the work of how and when and who returns to Community Board 7 meetings will continue after this vote tonight. So I'm going to go to Ken first and then to Jay, and then we're going to wrap it up. And if it's okay with everyone, do a vote. I know it's getting quite late tonight.
Okay,
Ken.
what I was trying to say earlier was that maybe the proponent of the resolution should answer questions rather than somebody else. But anyway, I entirely agree with what Joy just said. This is not a debate over whether we should meet in person or not. Those are things, that's the reason we created this task force, to figure out questions like that. Whether we should meet in person, whether we should have hybrid meetings, and what the rules for those should be, whether if your camera's off, does that mean you're not there? All those things have to be hammered out by the task force and then put in our bylaws. That's not what's on the table now. What only thing on the table now is a bill that would allow us to even discuss that stuff, because right now, if we want to meet remotely, as Joy said, we have to invite anybody in. And Paige, this is not to invite anybody into our meetings. It's to prevent that, whether you have hot cocoa or not. So this is a very progressive bill. It brings the open meetings law into the 21st century. All these other questions, believe me, are going to be debating down the line. I like in-person meetings. I prefer in-person meetings. I think we don't have some of the dissension and whatever that we just had in an in-person meeting as much. Things get a little less likely to get out of hand. So, but those are questions for later. This does not lock us into anything, except it just gives us a lot more options. That's all.
I turn it over to Jay for final comments, and then we'll wrap up and have a vote, since this resolution has been.
Joy and Ken and Elizabeth reiterated what I said earlier. This is a very limited bill. All of these comments and questions and so forth are not germane to this particular bill, and they are absolutely right. I don't believe we should be considering this at all, which is what I've said all along. So I'm not going to vote in favor of it. Almost as a matter of courtesy, I'm not going to register a no vote. I'm going to abstain on it, which I normally don't like to do. And my final comment is another unusual thing that's taken place tonight is that I absolutely agree with Howard.
So thanks everyone for your contributions tonight. I think if there are no further hands raised, what we'd like to do, I think everyone can see on the screen. I want to thank Max and Stephen and the board office for putting this up. Again, I want to encourage everyone who has thoughts on how and when and if we return at the full board, at committees. We have heard several, as I said, amazing suggestions, issues that I never thought would be important to people, that are clearly going to carve out the purpose of the task force by the end of the summer, is to provide information that we can give to our elected officials that can help guide them on legislation that they end up doing. Tonight, we had a specific request from a task force member about a piece of legislation that has been presented with a friendly amendment. It's before you right now, and we're asking everyone to vote. So unless there are any other further questions, we'd like to vote on this right now tonight. Rich, I see your hand up if you have a very quick question. And Barbara, if you have a very quick question, I would really like us to try to vote on this tonight.
Really quickly, I see Senator Brad Hoylman, the sponsor of the bill, is here. I'm wondering if he wants to say anything.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you very much. This has been an interesting discussion. Thank you for just, for considering it. I think it's so important, obviously, whether you're a member of a community board, a member of community education council, a member of a voluntary town board, outside of New York City. I'll tell you that your timing is very opportune as we sit here in this community board meeting remotely. We're actually negotiating a piece of the budget that will include, we hope, some provision reflecting this legislation and some of my colleagues' suggestions in connection with virtual meetings. So I plan on sending your vote and your comments or your amendments to Senate Council tonight as either a vote of confidence, or if you've got suggestions that we should take to them, because this should be in print as early as tomorrow, potentially, if things work out the way I suspect they could. So we're looking for a resolution on this very soon.
Thank you, Senator. Could you just tell us exactly what's going to be in print, since you're here with us?
What's that?
Could you explain to us what exactly you expect to be in print, as you mentioned?
Well, I don't know yet, which is typical of budget negotiations. This bill is certainly on the table, as are different versions of the bill. One bill, for example, that requires at least one representative of the organization to be physically present at a location. There are different permutations that reflect different bills, but the gist is the same overall. And some of what we are seeking may not be specified in the actual bill language, but might be left to regulation to be adopted in the coming weeks once we pass the budget. So
again, I hate to put you on the spot, but could you give us the gist in 1 or 2 sentences of what the legislation is?
The gist is
So that we can go down
pretty much what you see before you in my legislation. I hope, again, I'll believe it when I see it in print, Elizabeth. You know how these things go in the budget. But we know that it is on the table, as they say, and being discussed by the leaders of both houses and the governor's team. I don't have information as to whether it's going to make it across the finish line or not, but I do have a strong sense as of yesterday that it was still being considered and looked good, as I was told. So
Okay.
a version of this bill that would allow for virtual attendance by voluntary members of, community organizations like community boards and community education councils is on the table for consideration and has the support of, I believe, both houses, and we're working out, language with the parties and the governor. But again, fingers crossed that we get it across the finish line.
Okay, so you've heard from, thank you, Senator Hoylman.
Thank you. Good
It's
to
great
see
to have
everyone.
you on the call talking
Thank you.
about this.
Thanks for your guidance.
Again, there is legislation that has been proposed. There has been a resolution by one of our task force members on the table. I think it's time for us to vote based on what we've heard tonight. So unless there are further questions or hands raised, do I see any hands raised? You see what's on the screen right now with the amended legislation with the friendly amendment. I believe that is what we are here to vote on. Correct me if I'm wrong, parliamentarians. But I guess I will call the question if nobody else has
Let's vote.
agreed to do that.
Great. So all of those in favor of the resolution, let's raise their hands. Great. I don't think it's going to be close, but I think there's going to be descending. So I'm going to ask everyone to vote and hold because we want to make sure that this is close. I mean, this is correct.
Not close.
So just want to get the numbers right. Anybody else? We're going to hold the digital votes. Great. Bev?
25, digital.
Great, let's take those down. All those against?
I see 2.
Great. Abstaining? I'm raising my physical hand up to abstain.
So 9
And my
virtual
physical hand.
and 1, so 10.
Great, let's take that down. And anybody for cause? Wait a minute, let's just take all those down again. Christian, could you take all the hands down? They're still off, thank you. And anybody for cause? Great. And do you want to read that?
25 to 2 to 10 to 0.
Okay, well.
If I could just give a final pitch for the task force, I want to thank everyone who's contributed so far. I know these have been contentious discussions. We have Senator Hoylman on the line right now. We're grateful for your participation tonight. We really look forward to working with you on very, very specific issues related to remote meetings. Senator Hoylman in particular, on how we vote, where we vote, and when we vote, if we are doing a virtual option, both for board members and expanding and democratizing this for members of the public who want to join and be a part of our meetings. That involves a lot of infrastructure, a lot of technology, and we look forward to working with you in the weeks ahead on implementing that. So thank you.
Thank you. Great, let's move on. So we're toward the end of our business session. I have sort of my section and a couple small announcements. Let's just first say we do want to confirm the minutes from the last meeting. What I'm going to do is the reverse. Does anybody have an issue with the minutes from the last meeting? Okay, then I'm going to say, do we have a unanimous vote for the minutes for the last meeting? Can we all say aye? Well, I heard a lot of ayes there. Exactly. Great. Okay. So let's. We have the chair report, and we have somewhat of announcements. I'm going to keep it brief again because I know that we are about an hour over where we wanted to be. First, I just wanted to announce through the process that we are super happy to formally announce, although he's been working with us, that we do have a new district manager, and it's Maxwell Vandervliet. He's been great. So let's all thank Max. In the future, we'll have Matt say some words, but Max, do you want to say some words of gratitude or any thoughts that you want to add?
Oh, I'll just keep it brief. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Not much to report currently. Thank you.
All right, well, we'll put a pin on it. We know there's many more to come, and we appreciate your brevity from a timing perspective, but that's why he's a class act and he got the job. He always reads the pulse of the group. So we appreciate that as well. Small announcement. I think most people know steering got adjusted this month. There were some schedule changes. It's unusual. So it's going to be literally this Thursday. It's been posted, but sometimes people don't notice that. So steering is actually going to be very early in the month. It's going to be this Thursday, and anybody who wants to come to steering, please do so. And I just wanted to add again, there has been, the only thing I'm going to add is that there is some work being done at the Manhattan Borough President's Office that's talking about equity in terms of people speaking. And I think that there was a little bit of a contentious moment, but I did want to elaborate that there is a lot of studies being done to make sure that all 50 people have equal time to speak. And I think that we have to understand that everyone has to have an opportunity to speak. And we have to be cognitive of that. And sometimes there is a finite amount of oxygen in the room for people to speak. So when we go very long, or when we continue to answer questions, and when we are depriving other people of their opportunity to speak. And I think that's very, very important and something that we're going to be doing moving forward. I know we don't always think of it that way. We want to kind of express our thoughts. We want to answer a question, but we have to allow everyone to speak. And there's going to be more conversations coming out of the Manhattan Borough President Office. There's a study that's going on. We'll monitor that. But I do think that there is equity of of time to speak. And I really encourage us to be conscious of that. And to be, to take a note, because that's going to be coming up as something they're going to be presenting. So with that, let's move on to our public session. And speaking, we're going to have our in-person, and speaking of the Manhattan Borough President, I'm going to start with the Deputy Borough President, Keisha Sutton James, who I believe is here today. I hope I said that right, Keisha.
Yes, you got it. You got it. Just took me a second to get off mute. I thank you, Stephen, and thank you all, frankly, for the really robust. I've been on for a while, so it was a really robust conversation. I should say that I think many of you have known that Borough President Levine has been calling for months for a permanent hybrid solution, mostly in response to overwhelming feedback from community boards, calling for the need for said solution. Excuse me. So in the last week and a half or so, I think it was last week, he also joined all 5 borough presidents in calling for a permanent hybrid solution. And as you probably also know, also supports Senator Hoyleman's legislation. So I appreciate, I will say on behalf of our office and the borough president, I appreciate Elizabeth's efforts and Ken bringing forward the resolution, and each one of you for engaging in a robust conversation, and then but ultimately supporting the legislation as it's currently stated, with the expectation, obviously, that as Senator Hoyleman said, that there will be something that will closely reflect it. So I wanted to share that. In addition, many of you probably have already heard about Borough President's initiative, Stay Healthy to Stay Open, which is really focused on COVID safety. It's a proactive plan to keep New Yorkers healthy in order for us to be able to stay open. And what we're calling for is for the city to, further its efforts to get people boosted, because we understand that, that boosting really is the kind of, at this point, the final frontier, unless we get a 4th CDC, a 4th vaccination that's, kind of required and called for universally across the board. But at least everyone should be boosted at this point. Also calling for COVID safety bags, which we will be, not to scoop us, but we'll be distributing COVID safety bags that will include masks, test kits, et cetera, et cetera. Also to have masks available in all city buildings. Also calling for better data, including testing data in every community, and in particular focused on equity data to support communities that are hardest hit by COVID. So keep an eye out for the work that we're doing around Stay Healthy to Stay Open. To really, given the task force that the borough president has pulled together with some of his former colleagues and friends and experts from when he was was chair of the health committee. Some of the best minds on this work, they have come up with this plan. Not me, I didn't come up with it. That would not be helpful to us at all. With regard to community board interviews, I think you've also been made aware that we had almost 900 applications come in to serve on community boards Manhattan-wide. Excuse me. It is actually a record, more applicants for community board service than any year except the year after Donald Trump was elected. And we have interviewed nearly every candidate. So thank you so much to everyone who is reapplying for actually, for getting your application in and for participating in one of our interview sessions. If you have not yet participated in an interview session, please reach out to Eric Coyo, who is, I believe, still on this Zoom, and he'll make sure that you get signed up. There's one more interview session that's being held on Monday evening at 6:30. We held, most of them not during the evening when community boards are, meetings are normally held, because community board meetings are normally held, and it's hard to get these things scheduled around our community board meetings. So please reach out to Eric if you have not yet, if you are reapplying and have not yet done your interview. And finally, just wanted to lift up the fact that last week, Mark submitted testimony on the city's budget for the Department of Sanitation and Transportation, MTA, DOE, et cetera, and recently also provided testimony with regard to parks. He joined, he and we all, our office joined New Yorkers for Parks in rallying for more funding for parks. Currently, the city budget allocates around 0.5% to our entire park system. And we're calling for that to increase that number, that number to 1% this year. So that, is more action that he's taking kind of in concert with the call for 1 million additional trees to continue our resiliency work out of this office. Lastly, and I think I said finally before, but lastly, I just want to say, I want to thank everyone for participating in those who were able to participate in the borough board meeting a couple of weeks ago. We were thrilled to have a presentation from the independent budget office on the city's preliminary budget. It was also a lively discussion and with chock full of data and information. And as you know, we are very much looking forward to hearing from each of the community boards. Our boards play a critical role in the budget process, and we look forward to hearing receiving the board's feedback on budget priorities. So that is our quick readout. Please let me know if you need anything else from me.
Thank you. And we're going to continue on, and we're going to have City Council person Brewer speak. And thank you very much, Ms. Shanes. Anybody has any questions for them? I'm sure, Eric, you can coordinate and follow up with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, and congratulations to Max. We love working with him, and I am delighted that he's your district manager. A few things. First of all, just in terms of issues that we're confronting, I don't think there's any surprise to you about sanitation. The good news is in the budget, and I sit on the budget negotiation team, the finance committee, and I'm also part of the leadership. There are 6 of us who work with Speaker Adams. The issue of sanitation is one of the topics that I think will get hopefully reinstated in terms of the organics and also just more sanitation dollars for pickup. I will say on the organics, we got to do more in Board 7 because we're one of the few districts that does have organics pickup. But if we don't increase it, then we're not going to be able to keep it, and we're not going to be able to show to the city that it is such an important aspect of city living. So please, if you can go to the Department of Sanitation's website, our newsletter, and sign up. I have to say I've been doing it and pretty religiously, and it was funny because somebody stole my brown bin a while ago, and the sanitation department returned and brought me a new one immediately. It's a very personal group of city employees working on organic. So the board should be pushing this, push it in your civic, your block, your board, your tenant association, et cetera, because we've got to get the numbers up. That's number one. And then we're going to push not only for more sanitation, litter, we've been pushing to get the alternate side of the street parking so that the street sweeper comes through, because lots of times they weren't. So all of the sanitation issue. We are going April 12th at 10 a.m. You're welcome to join us on a walkthrough at 72nd Street with the Department of Sanitation. They cleaned it, but we got to go, owner by owner, storefront by storefront to say, this is a law. We don't want you to get a ticket, but please keep your area clean. And we can do that all up and down. We're going to do the same thing in terms of vacant storefronts. I'm going to talk to many of you before we do this. It hasn't planned, but Manhattan Chamber of Commerce got a huge federal grant to look at vacancies. Save Our Stores has been doing this. We'd love to work with Community Board 7 to figure out in our area what's vacant, what's not, et cetera. Same thing with the dark stores. We just got a letter from the city. I will share it with you. It doesn't say very much. It basically says, we know there's a problem. Please tell us where the problems are. I can't tell you. I will just leave it at that because I'm not too pleased with this letter. But again, we're not going to give up on, they don't have the right pricing, they don't take cash, they're not necessarily transparent on the windows, and of course, I don't think they're legal zoning wise. So all of that is still part of the issue of vacancies. In terms of the budget, there is as you know, the mayor's answer from the city council preliminarily, and a lot of work went into it. I think it, talks about some of the things that you are aware of, sanitation. There's so many places that there is an increase. There's also different ways of approaching budget issues. And this is just the beginning. Obviously parks, there's the youth, there's workforce development. There are 21 agencies working on workforce development. We had a hearing about that. That's craziness. So there are good things that the mayor's doing in terms of obviously summer youth employment, but many people would like to have that more year round. Obviously, he's talked about some of the healthcare, mental health, be heard, but there needs to be more. And there's very little money for housing for homeless or anybody who needs affordable housing. So all of that is to be discussed. There's anyway, so lots of work on the budget and much more to be done. On legislation, there are a lot of bills that are being introduced. We have the ones that we picked up primarily from the borough president's office, where I had about 20 bills that had not passed. We have one that is still challenging, as we know, on what to do about storefronts. There are lots of bills on that topic. We're working on issues regarding the what the building temperature should be. It's always controversial. And we have things on making sure that people know that there is a paid sick law so that it's posted in more places, etc. And all of that is all available on our website and the city council's website. Now, just in terms of more challenging things, the good news we got on 103rd Street, there's a Nypd building that has broken sidewalk, broken foundation, etc., and two agencies not talking to each other. So we were able, this is a miracle, to get the Nypd to fix up enough of the foundation of this building so the Department of Transportation can come in and fix the sidewalk so people don't trip. I know that seems like a minor thing, but you have no idea what it's like to get those two agencies to talk to each other. And that was a big deal. We're also, just as part of the budget citywide, I really would like to have many more of the community centers at NYCHA open more hours. Lincoln Square Neighborhood Center is not open on the weekend. Goddard Riverside is not open much on the weekend. And you do have at Brandeis High School some of the Saturday night, basketball, but it's not open enough. So that's just to give you an idea of more things that need to go into the budget. We have tons of calls about the Amazon trucks. I don't know if you're getting them also, but they are parking in places where they are not supposed to be parking. I know everybody at Amazon. So I am going to be all over their case in terms of that is not appropriate. Fresh Direct doesn't do, I know there's complaints about it, but they don't park where they're not supposed to park. And they are also, it's a different type of oversight, I think. So anyway, Amazon trucks, big problem. Now, what I'm really concerned about, and Paige knows this as well as I do, this is hard. West Park Presbyterian Church. I spent a great deal of time in 2010 getting it landmarked. And just today, as you saw from some of the newspapers, it has been sold by the Presbyterian Church to a developer who wants to tear it down and build condos. That's the short version. It would be a tragedy. It's landmarked. It has to go through a process of hardship if it is going to happen. I will tell you, I'm going to fight this with every bone in my body. I've already talked to Landmarks Preservation Commission. I don't think it should happen. I really think that that should not be torn down and turned into a condo or whatever it would be. So just so you know, that's just happened today in terms of the sale, but of course it's been talked about for a couple of weeks now. We're very aware, for whatever reason, in the last few years, almost a decade, there wasn't the ability to raise the money to buy it from the Presbyterian Church to be the art center that it has become. So that's a real challenge. The other challenge is soldiers and sailors in 89th Street and Riverside Park. We do need about 38, maybe $40 million. So we're going to be working with the federal officials to try to get that kind of funding to be able to restore it to its grandeur. and get rid of the fence that's around it. So those are some of the things we're working on. Obviously, participatory budgeting is going well. Thank you, Community Board 7. We've had locations. The best is the online. Hundreds and thousands of people are signing up online, and that makes a big difference in terms of the number and the participation. Sort of back to your discussion today about hybrids. And we will let you know the last date is April 10th. Make sure that people sign up. I also want to thank the city because we've given out, thousands of test kits in the last couple of days. People are appreciative. I appreciate the city for giving them to us so that we can give them out. Thank you very much, and we look forward to working with Board 7.
Thank you very much. State Senator Hoylman.
Thank you again, Stephen. Good to see everyone. Good to see Councilmember Brewer and Deputy Borough President Sutton James. Just wanted to update you on the state budget. We're in the kind of final stretch here. It's not going to be an on-time budget. It's going to be a timely budget, which is what they like to say in Albany, since we didn't make April 1st. But I think we are headed toward voting beginning as early as Thursday, I think, possibly tomorrow, but I don't think so. I think it's Thursday, which means that bills are being printed, which is, going to determine the fate of a lot of efforts that I've been pushing, including amendments to the open meetings law. We'll get you those details as they become available. There will be, I imagine, some opportunity to add some meat to the bones of whatever we pass in terms of regulation. So again, your concerns that are going to be raised by this task force are going to be important. The budget's up in Albany is about $212 billion. Thankfully, we have a surplus, so it should be easy, but it's not, because there are a lot of competing interests. But we're fighting for additional COVID-19 relief for tenants, landlords, and utility customers. We're fighting for increased pay for home care workers, new funding for mental health services, and a lot more. And I'll be sharing that information again as it becomes available. Of course, the bail laws have been a source of negotiation. The governor plan, the Senate and the Assembly respond on plans, and we'll see where we end up over the next couple of days. A lot of those negotiations are happening at the highest level. It used to be 3 men in a room. Now it's 2 women and a man in the room. And so, but the kind of closed nature of those types of negotiation kind of remain, even though your representatives in the Assembly and the Senate are getting briefed regularly. We often don't know the final details until they're printed. I wanted you to let you know that I passed a bill today that would create a clear law against tampering, disabling, removing, or interfering with emission control devices on vehicles. They're meant to be installed to regulate air pollutants, and some people have messed around with them, and we need to increase fines on those who do, to try to get around various climate goals that we have. And then finally, I'll close here. I heard the Deputy Borough President talk about boosters. I am continuing to participate in a booster trial. So I got my 4th shot today at the NYU Vaccine Center. The latest booster that's experimental, which I had today, is targeted specifically toward Omicron. So we'll see how that goes. And in the meantime, if you need any test kits, like a lot of your elected officials, we have many of them. Tevin Williams from my team is on the Zoom and can provide you information as to how you can obtain them. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So we're going to call on representatives, and I think, unfortunately, because of the length, some members have left, but there are some notes in the Q&A that I'll read into them. So why don't we start first, and we'll call on Erica Overton. And I just also want to say, anybody who's still here as an attendee, if you'd like to raise your digital hand, we'll make sure that you get called on. Go ahead, Eric.
Hi, everyone. Erica Overton from Assembly Member Linda B. Rosenthal's office. Echoing much of what Brad said, the Assembly member is obviously in Albany doing budget negotiations. She will be here next month if they're still not negotiating to talk about the budget. So I'll leave that to her. And then second, the Assembly member sent a letter to DP and the mayor earlier this month about changes that the city had proposed to the law, which prohibits idling for longer than 3 minutes. And we got comment about it from CB4. And so we wrote to them, they responded, they are going to have an anti-idling roundtable in late April. So we'll find out more information, and then Steve will connect with you guys and CB4 about it. And then second, we did on West 73rd Street between Columbus and Amsterdam. Someone reached out and thought it was too dark on the street. And so we had DOT go out and do a lighting study. It takes a little while, but we just got our results and it is too dark. And so the lights are going to come back on. We're going to get additional lighting there. I have yet to be told when it will be installed, but we'll keep following up with DOT. And then last but not least, the Assembly member's bill to exempt certain income and resources provided to people enrolled in poverty programs and research programs was passed by the Assembly. The other day, there is a pilot program that is run in New York City with the University of Chicago for runaway and homeless youth, and it provides direct cash assistance to homeless youth. And so it is a limited time pilot program, but those funds prevented them from being put on benefits. And so passed a bill so that they could also access benefits along with everybody else. So that's it from me.
Thank you. I do want to read a Q&A remark from Chris Giordano, and his comment is: the next chapter in the community zoning challenge in 36 West 60th Street Extel construction site will take place tomorrow in the New York State Appellate Court, Landmark West versus New York Board of Standards and Appeals, the Department of Buildings in Extel. The appeal will be heard by the New York State Appellate Division, First Department of the Supreme Court tomorrow, April 6th. This hearing should begin at 2 p.m. and you should follow along on YouTube. The case is fourth on the agenda. So thank you, Chris. Let's continue on with some representatives, and we can have, I think it's Sophie Secor, if I'm saying that correct.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name's Sophie, and I'm the new community liaison in Senator Serrano's office. I'm just going to give you guys a couple updates. We do have some take-home COVID tests. If you're in need of a test, just feel free to reach out to our office and we can facilitate some distribution. The senators passed 2 bills. The first is to permit farmers markets in state and local parks. This is going to help increase access to healthy, fresh food from locally sourced places. And the second was to create a state park passport program, which will help connect more people to our state parks.
Thank you. And welcome. Emmett Sklar.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. I am with Councilmember Sean Abreu's office, and as some of you all may know, the council recently sent its own version of the preliminary budget back to the mayor, and we were very excited to get some of our key priorities included in that preliminary budget. I just like to say preliminary to emphasize that it is not the final budget, so we're still fighting for a lot of these things, but we're excited to have included a property tax rebate for homeowners in need, more money for rat mitigation efforts, money for mental health services, and a lot of the housing priorities as well that the council member has. So we're excited on that front. We've also started working with some of our fellow council members on a piece of fire safety legislation. As many of you know, with the awful fire in the Bronx earlier this year, there were a lot of issues around self-closing doors. And so this bill will make sure that that issue is addressed in the future and that these large apartment buildings have fully functioning, accountable self-closing doors. And so we paired that as well with an upcoming fire safety event that we're going to have with FDMY and we're hopeful just in the future to mitigate some of the really tragic and large fires that we've seen in the past. Additionally, we have some upcoming district events. We had last week our first Green Card Wednesday, and we're going to continue to do that. So if you know anyone who needs any assistance with immigration paperwork and becoming a full resident of the New York City and the country, you can come, and we have a special event once a week where we help folks with that. We also did some work this last week cleaning up the Broadway Mall, and I encourage everyone, if you see any spots in the district with a large buildup of trash and garbage, to reach out to us and fill out our sanitation survey, and we will send an ACE team to clean up that specific spot. We also recently had our monthly food pantry, and we'll be doing that again this month. So thank you all for having me, and have a good rest of your night.
Thank you, Emmett. I'm gonna, sometimes I just randomly calling on some of the reps, but any rep that wants to speak, if you raise your digital hand, I think that would be the best way to help me out today. I do have a list, but anybody who wants to speak, put their hands up and I'll make sure I get to everyone, and we'll have Hannah speak next.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Hi, I'm Hannah from Congressman Jerry Nadler's office. So in March, Congress passed the FY22 appropriations bill, which included $10.8 million for New York 10 community funding requests. So in the interest of time, you can look up all of the projects that got awarded funding on our website. I will send the link to Max. Last Friday, the House passed Congressman Nadler's bill called the MORE Act on a bipartisan basis. The MORE Act would reverse decades of failed federal policies based on the criminalization of marijuana by legalizing marijuana and retroactively expunging previous convictions. It goes to the Senate, and we hope that it is considered promptly. President Biden just announced that he would extend the pause on student loan payments through August 31st. So Congressman Nadler applauds the decision and continues to call for the cancellation of student loan debt. Representative Nadler co-led a letter with the New York City delegation to Governor Hochul, Speaker Hasty, and Leader Stuart Cousins in support of the passage of the prohibition of the eviction without the good cause bill currently before the New York State legislature. So we look forward to seeing what happens with that. In COVID news, this is actually very exciting. So folks with Medicare Part B, or if you have any Medicare Advantage plan, you can get free COVID over-the-counter COVID tests by going to any participating pharmacy, which includes CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid. You just need to bring in your Medicare card. It's the one with like the blue, white, and red. You can bring it to any pharmacy. It doesn't have to be your pharmacy. You are eligible for 8 free COVID tests per month. I will also include a fact sheet with more information in an email to Max. So if you have any follow-up questions, my email is my first name dot my last name at mail.house.gov. And a pleasure to see everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. I want to read another Q&A statement from the public, and it's Tommy Budicio. I'm butchering his last name. But Tommy says, good evening. I'm Tommy, the supervising librarian from the NYPL Riverside Library. I'm excited to share what the branch is coming up at what is coming up at the branch during the community comment section. If there's any time, if we're out of time, please reach out to me and we'll learn more about that. So I don't know if Tommy's still here, but if he's not, Max, why don't we reach out to him and perhaps we can coordinate some more messages from him. I guess he couldn't stay on any longer. So let's continue on with representatives, and let's have Bryce.
Yes, thank you so much. As it happens, Assemblymember Gottfried was interviewed live this afternoon by Errol Lewis of New York One News for about 4 minutes or so, talking about the state budget, bail reform, his opposition to citing a casino in Manhattan, which would likely be in his assembly district on the west side of Manhattan, probably around Times Square, possibly closer to Community Board 7, something we really want to keep an eye on. He's determined to oppose that. I know the meeting is running very long, so that interview is actually aired on New York One at 7:49 p.m., and it will re-air tonight at 11:49 p.m. If anyone gets New York One News. Anyone at all, whether they subscribe to cable TV or not, can read the story online. It's already up on New York One's website. you just click on politics and inside City Hall, you can read a pretty good write-up of that interview. Office is continuing to monitor developments on West 66th Street with the Extell site. Unfortunately, Assemblymember Gottfried's interview is coming up on New York 1 right when the vote on 42 West 70th Street took place. So I'll follow up with Max Vander Vliet on that tomorrow. Thank everyone. And on that note, I think Max, it's been really great working with him, and I think it's a superb choice. I congratulate the board, and I wish everyone a good night.
Thank you very much. Grant Dennis.
Okay, good evening. Actually, my name is Anthony Gray. I'm the Community Affairs Liaison for Senator Clear's office. And I'll just be brief. She's very excited about bills of the month. In March, the senator had her first bill passed through the Senate. This bill allows pregnant women to enroll in health insurance during a special enrollment period without penalty. She also has her next bill, which is increased punishment on sex trafficking. As chair of the Women's Issues Committee, Senator Clear introduced this legislation to increase penalties on those who engage in human trafficking of those who are mentally disabled, mentally incapacitated, or physically helpless. This weekend, she's also in Albany during caucus weekend. She's going to have a panel discussion about human trafficking, and she's very excited about that. If anyone needs to contact me, my email is agray@nysenate.gov. She wants to continue to let the community know the office is open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, in the state office building at 163 West 125th Street, Suite 912. We also still have free home COVID test kits for anyone who needs it. It's still pretty much by appointment. You can reach me via email, or you can call the office at 212-222-7315. I'd like to thank Community Board 7 for allowing me to speak tonight on behalf of Senator Clear. Have a great night.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to look. I think that's going to draw our community session and our meeting to an end. I think that's all of us.
Stephen, sorry, this is Grant. I had shared my.
Oh, okay. So thank you for calling, I guess. So there's clarity. So let's have Grant 2 speak.
Thank you. So I'm coming from Senator Jackson's office, and recently Senator Jackson sat down with the New York City Schools Chancellor, David Banks, regarding health and as well education in our schools. And that has led him to one of the ideas, which is we understand that everyone has been going through hard times throughout this pandemic, especially kids, which is why opting out of state tests might be an option that parents might be interested in. And if that's the case, you can contact our office and we will give you steps on how to complete this process, or you can email me at my email, which is gdennis, DENNIS, @nysenate.gov. As well, the senator has a bill that he is focused on, which is Safeguarding Employees and Accountability for Termination Act. And the goal of this is to create a good cause standard for employers when they're trying to discharge employees. So it's giving them or explaining or giving a good reason for why they're doing it. And then the last thing the senator is focused on is a tick and Lyme disease prevention program. They're focusing on educating people on other infections and transmissions that could be going on. If you're interested in learning more about this, please visit the senator's website or please call our office. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I want to thank everyone for tonight. I'm going to call the meeting.
My hand is up.
Well, this is the community session, Ken. So if there's something, if you have a question and you want to reach out to one of the public officials, I'd encourage you to do so. But I think we're going to wrap up the meeting as we speak. So I want to thank everyone for a great meeting. I know it's been a little contentious, but we've got to continue to sort of work through these processes. But thank you very much. And I will see everyone on Thursday for the steering meeting. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Good night.
Second.
Good night. Thank you.
I second and third. Good night.
What's this?